How we gonna stand up some corner that's not ours?
Well, we got the best product, right? So the chances are we gonna be able to bring in the competition by offering the re-up with us from our package. Feel me? Everybody making money, sharing the real estate. Slim Charles.
But what if they don't cop our re-up, though?
Well, I'm gonna worry about that when it happens. Until then, Mr. Charles, we gonna handle this shit like businessmen. Sell the shit, make the profit, and later for that gangster bullshit.
Alex Cottrell and Toby Huntingford present Caught on the Wire. This podcast is an episode-by-episode analysis of HBO's widely acclaimed TV series about the city of Baltimore, its people, and its many problems. Find more information about the show and all the episodes online at caughtonthewire.wordpress.com. It's time for Season 3. We're finally here. It's time for Caught on the Wire. We're doing Time After Time this week. Season 3, Episode 1, kicking off brand new season, and we're doing things a bit differently this way as well. We're just trying to approach the opening of our episodes a bit differently. Just not to be less worried about being tangential and going off topic. We're going to have a slightly more off topic opening section just to ease into the podcast with.
Yeah, just a little,
Toby?
Casual chat. Yeah, so just kind of stroll onto our laptops and turn on the podcast rather than make it a big event. So yeah, just kind of a nice little chat really, where we can kind of get things off our chest or whatever before we jump into the analysis. So I think that's quite a nice way for the podcast to work really. That's the podcast that I enjoy certainly work like that anyway.
In recent times we've been talking a bit more about other shows we've been watching and stuff like that, so maybe we should do a bit more of that. That's what we were thinking at the start of the show. I mean, some people may like it, some people may not. I mean, if it's a change that you enjoy, then let us know, and if it's something that you'd like to see less of, then we can try and curb it a bit, but we're just testing the waters, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we can always put a little time code on the kind of info for the episode to give you when the episode actually starts in terms of analysis, if you don't fancy listening, so it's all fine. But yeah, I mean, just it's a good time for television at the moment. We've got a lot on, including some greats like Mad Men and Game of Thrones, as we've been discussing recently, so I don't know if you've been keeping up, Alex.
Not with Mad Men. I've barely seen any of Mad Men, to be honest with you. I think I've heard the theme tune more times than I've seen the actual show. But Game of Thrones I have been watching, and I must admit that getting anxious for those new episodes. It's happening again. It's quite an addictive show, I've got to say.
No, it's very good. It's a very strong start. Nothing too monumental. I feel like we've been spoilt with stuff like... Sorry, I've just realised that's an awful spoiler to give away for a non-Game of Thrones podcast, just in case anyone is actually watching that show and is behind. Sorry guys, you just kind of got... That's one of the first rules of TV podcasting is you got to watch your spoiler mouth.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
But yeah,
I'll be sure to put on the podcast description that there is a big Game of Thrones spoiler accidentally put in.
Or we could just kind of bleep it out and hope that
What season is that?
Season 4, Episode 2.
Okay.
The Purple Wedding. Yeah, we could even bleep it out and just kind of hope that some listeners understand what I mean by it. But yeah, that's a pretty big boo-boo.
Yeah, just bleep it.
So we've had the Red Wedding and the Purple Wedding, and we've had a few big events, and it feels like something is brewing up, but I don't
mind. I quite like the slow build. It's still a very satisfying show. I do really enjoy seeing a lot of the characters, and some of the ones I wasn't enjoying as much, I'm enjoying more of now, like Cersei Lannister. I'm really liking her character now. She's so deliciously manipulative all the time.
Yeah, it feels like they're building this season up to kind of be hers, and I don't know whether she is going to die at the end of it, but I feel that may well be a likely outcome, particularly with the way they kind of built up that flash forward in the first episode. The way the season opened, that very ominous... I think she was told she was going to have to watch her 3 children die and then die herself, so a lovely, bright way to kick us off.
I feel like they've just got the style down. I think I mentioned this last week. Like they've just been doing it long enough now that they've just nailed the Game of Thrones style, the uniqueness of it.
Yeah, and that's definitely helped by their ever-expanding budget as well. You really feel that money in the screen. Like just the scope of everything's a little bit wider, and they're just putting more and more things on the screen.
It's nice to see all the little nods to what happened in the previous season. I don't want to say another major spoiler. I was about to do it. Nearly made the same mistake.
It's just so easy to do, isn't it? You don't appreciate how restrained people are until you actually have to sit in the seat yourself and not talk about things.
The major event that happened right at the end, I just say what Tyrion does to a certain someone in a rather unfortunate
You
position.
don't need to say it. People who've watched will know what you mean. Absolutely.
So there's a kind of quite a few nice little nods to that of characters sort of pointing it out on the moments and in the actual like funeral, as it were, itself. In that's in the first episode, right?
Nods to Tyrion. What you mean? What Tyrion did and like the aftermath.
But they have the actual funeral.
Oh yeah, it's a very yeah they do. Although I think you actually see the character does come back for a little cameo, doesn't he? But yeah, there's certainly that scene at the start with the stones.
Yeah.
I'm just realising that
was
even
nice.
now we're tangentially spoiling stuff, but I hope that wasn't too severe. But yeah.
It's just gonna be a big warning.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So it's good to see that, and a lot of characters are in different places now, more so than other seasons. So it changes the format up a little bit, and we're now exploring a new region as well. We're getting to see a bit of Dawn, which feels like the last corner of the map. Actually, I would like to see the Westerlands, where the Lannisters are from. I don't think we've seen any of Casterly Rock yet. But there's obviously lots we've heard about, and we're finally seeing snippets of other places, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you say, you can really feel that the show's grown. Like in the first season, you'd never ever seen any of those big landscape shots that are probably mostly CGI. They're really a mainstay of the later seasons once the money was there to kind of justify the extras. So
Yeah, visually it's improved a lot. That scene where they're like pulling that statue off the top of the pyramid. That was clearly like, vastly or like overwhelmingly CGI, but it looked pretty good. It was quite an epic shot, I suppose you could say.
Oh yeah, definitely.
This big statue being pulled down, very impressive. So yeah, the budget increase has clearly helped. You seen any of the behind the scenes stuff?
I know that there's a big documentary that was released ahead of season 5 about that. No, I haven't.
They were looking at stuff like the extras and all the tons and tons of extras that they have for all these scenes and all the makeup and all the sort of standing around and people arriving on set and the process of getting it all filmed. It was very interesting.
Sweet, yeah, I'll have to check it out. I have been meaning to.
That reminds me of a bunch of behind the scenes stuff because I don't know about you, but I always like watching the making of documentaries. They're some of my favourite types of sort of the making of films or games or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm not that interested by that stuff. But yeah, I think Game of Thrones is something that I'm kind of wedded to enough that I will enjoy seeing how all the things go down. And I know that they've such an expansive show. It's all over the world they filmed, don't they? They have these, well, at least all over Europe at least. So I want to see how they do things differently.
I enjoyed all of Peter Jackson's video diaries for The Hobbit before its release much more than The Hobbit.
Yeah, I do know how religiously you've scoured the entire DVD collection of Lord of the Rings, and that includes, I wouldn't like to guess how many hours of extras.
Yeah, I suppose I should at this point. I feel like I was going to say confess, but maybe that's not the right term. I don't think it's a guilty pleasure at all. Like The Lord of the Rings is by far my favourite film ever. For whatever reason, I absolutely love it. I could watch it endlessly. All the making of, all the stuff in the background, the soundtrack, just listen to it on repeat.
Yeah, I have to
That's a Desert Island disc.
There you go. My confession
It's a DVD.
for that is that I've only seen the whole thing through once, I believe. And it was good. It was actually very enjoyable. I felt that the first movie was probably worked best as a movie, and the second one was probably the most enjoyable, I think.
Yeah, Two Towers is very kind of loads and loads of action, and it's like an action fantasy film, isn't it? Whereas all of the more quaint preamble and stuff like that in The Fellowship makes it feel a lot more like a journey.
Yeah.
You kind of get taken from one very different place to another, and there's a very wonderful resolve in it all, lots of memorable moments. And whereas I think maybe with Two Towers, it's just a lot of battles and a lot of fighting, and there's less of it. Feels like there's slightly less of a journey, maybe.
I just love that battle.
It's all very serious.
The battle towards the end absolutely was by far the best action sequence I've seen in, well, not ever, but it's really up there as far as the way they built that battle up. Absolutely fantastic.
The fight scenes are fantastic.
Yeah. And it felt like the third film just had too much of it to really have the impact that it needed. It was a bit too patchy, really, and just very, very long, because I've only seen the extended versions. So I sort of started at the top of the ladder.
I suppose I should also mention that I haven't read Lord of the Rings. I've read The Hobbit, but I've not read Lord of the Rings. So there may be some purists out there that think less of me for that. That's fine.
I'm sure they won't hate you. So yeah.
That reminds that maybe brings me onto some emails, or one in particular email that we got this week. Got a couple of emails, but that talking about reading of the book in relation to a film, and we were talking about Game of Thrones before, leads me to stray towards Listener's Corner and read out this email that we received from a fellow named Dan, who sent a message via the website.
Okay.
And he basically tells his UK listener, he's living in Brighton at the moment. I'm just looking through the email and I'm just going to paraphrase it because it's quite a long email. We've got a couple of lengthy emails this week, which is good. Obviously, goes without saying, big fan of The Wire. And he says about his love for Game of Thrones, but more so the books, more so A Song of Ice and Fire. Talks about how great the books are, and says that he kind of got sort of encountered difficulty, shall we say, with Game of Thrones after Series 3, because he says, and I quote, "I'm pretty stubborn and haven't been on board with all the changes the showrunners have made to the story."
Yeah.
So that's understandable. I think I can make sense of that point of view. I've not read the books. I do really want to. Just haven't got around to it yet. It's just one of those things.
Yeah,
But I understand that point of view. I think there must be a lot of stuff that's been changed because the books are massive, aren't they? They're proper tomes.
Yeah.
There's no way they're cramming all of that into, 11, 12 episodes or something a season.
Yeah, I think you can really feel that they're kind of glossing over certain aspects of the story and taking shortcuts. Even without reading the book, you can tell that they're kind of doing those things quicker than they should. So, the story's still there, I guess, but you're missing out on the richness. And I have read the first book, so I do get an idea of how they differ. And it's a bit more of a slog, but I think overall more rewarding because you do get that extra detail that you want from the story. So, yeah, it's nonetheless a great show, and probably better for not having read the books because you don't know what you're missing.
So Dan goes on to say that he found us on YouTube, which is good. Sort of, I don't know if many people who listen to the show actually listen to us on YouTube because we don't get that many listens. It's just up there for convenience sake because I know some people like to listen on there. So it's good that Dan found us that way. And he says that it turned out to be excellent timing when he discovered us, as he just started a rewatch. Only this time he's bringing his girlfriend along for the ride. And he says that she's a school teacher in London and can't wait for her to see season 4 to see her take on the education system.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a good point. He also says that season 4 is his favourite season, which is good because it's my favourite season too.
And me.
And yeah, you also, I'm just scanning through it again here. He's enjoying the show. He compliments the show. He also mentions, and I quote, "Also, although I'm not a player of the Elder Scrolls games, the way Alex has picked up on the voice actors has been hilarious."
That esoteric knowledge. I think
I wasn't sure if it would just irritate people who haven't played the games. They'd just be like, "Why is he talking about voice actors on random game?" It's important to me. I care.
It adds richness. I think I'm all for it. Keep it going, Alex.
Well, like I said before, it's the Baltimore connection. That's what I think it is.
Yeah. Oh, is that where Bethesda are based? Are they or?
Yeah, I think with Bethesda Game Studios are based in Maryland. I'm not sure if it's in Baltimore, but I know they're in Maryland.
So you just have your head in the Bethesda game when you're watching The Wire, just in the back of you.
So many levels of games.
The game isn't Bethesda the game? Isn't that their kind of tagline, or am I just making that up?
Bethesda the
Because
game.
there's like in the middle of Bethesda, there's the word "the," isn't there? And then underneath they have. I swear I've seen the logo that kind of is written like that, the game. But maybe that's just me mixing.
That's new to me.
Okay, so I just
Your Bethesda fandom far outweighs mine, clearly. I feel humiliated.
at least
You've emasculated me in my knowledge of Bethesda.
at least your your predictions about Bethesda, but come true. Well, we assume they don't. No one's got proof that those voice actors are in the game, but we assume that what you're saying is legit. Unlike me, who just kind of rambles.
No, there is
Yeah.
proof. It's on IMDb.
Oh right, okay. There we go.
Yeah, no. These are verifiable
Okay,
facts. I didn't just make
okay.
it up.
Bang on.
No, I've checked my sources.
I mean, speaking of have you heard about the riots going on in Baltimore at the moment? It's rather...
Yes, I was going to say a little bit about that, but can we get to
yeah,
that
of course.
later? 'Cause I just
We
wanna
don't want
finish
it
the email.
interrupts our email.
So let's carry on with Dan's email. He says that he'd like to email across his thoughts, interpretations, and any disagreements that he has. And you're more than welcome, Dan. Please send us any emails if for any comments or sort of go alongside what we're saying about the show. He does say, and I quote, "I do think you're a little hard on Johnny Weeks." What do you reckon, Toby? Are we too hard on Johnny?
I got no sympathy for that character. I'm sorry.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, when you're essentially the sidekick for a character like Bubbles, it's quite difficult to stand out.
Yeah.
But I
can't argue that.
just can't
Yeah.
think of any like, oh man, that's a great Johnny moment.
And there's none of them. I think that's the point. I mean, I can't argue that he's not a victim. I'm sure he is a victim, and there's good in him to be found. But when you don't see any of it on the screen throughout 3 whole seasons, it's just very hard to ever kind of root for someone.
And it's tragic as well because he's such a slave to the dope, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he just hasn't.
That there's just not a lot of room there, and it's to think. I guess the idea is that once he was a kind of interesting and vibrant character and had this story and these people and this history, and here he's almost like faceless. We don't really know anything about his past or if he has any family or anything like that. He's just a kind of template dope fiend in a way.
Yeah,
So I guess that's kind of what he is, but as a result, it makes him a little bit more sort of difficult to empathise with, and again, especially when you're second to Bubbles.
Yeah, it is. It's someone that I can't agree. Unfortunately, it's just probably my most hated character in the whole show. Definitely, even the big evils, I can see some kind of appreciation in. As we've spoken about Levy and Clay Davis before, they're so good at what they do that you have to appreciate them on some level. So.
Dan also mentions a couple of books. I think you may have read one of these. I seem to recall seeing it, or maybe it was Tom. That would be Tom that we had on the finale of season 1.
Yes.
So he mentions 2 books. The first one's called The Wire: Truth Be Told. Have you read that
yes,
one?
I do have that lying around somewhere.
I've not read either of
I've
these.
got that, yeah. It's kind of the companion book to The Wire, yeah.
Is it good? Yeah, he recommends that one. I've not read it. So
It is good. It's got some. It's got kind of a small resume of every episode and a lot of. I think there's a big 50-page intro by David Simon, and it mainly kind of recites the letter he sent to HBO in the late 90s to kind of pitch the show. It's really interesting to see how it was advertised back then and how it would have been really difficult for them to take a big shot at what looked like a procedural police show back then, and how despite its lack of money-making skills, they still had faith in the show because they loved it so much, and that sort of thing. So it's good to see that. And yeah.
Dan, I want you to know that literally, as Toby is speaking, I am adding those 2 books to my Amazon wishlist.
Yes. What was the second book, by the way?
The second book is The Wire Re-Up.
No way.
The Guardian Guide to the Greatest TV Show Ever Made. I'm sure you've read that.
I bought those 2 books together in a little bundle.
Ah, right.
And I do love both of those books.
Great minds.
Yeah, absolutely. That's odd. There's probably a few more Wire books, but those 2 seem to be the ones that we picked up together. Yeah, the Re-Up is just a little bit like the podcast, really. It's just a little bunch of analysis from Guardian readers, actually. Guardian commenters online have been compiled into a little book, and they go through episode by episode. So,
Nice.
yeah.
So, nearing the end of the email from Dan here, just mentions a couple of extra things. he actually talks a little bit about the riots. We may bring this up again later, but I'll quote what he says here. You may have seen the news this week regarding the riots in Baltimore. Really serious stuff, especially with the deployment of troops. I'm not sure if David Simon has commented on this yet, but would be intrigued to hear his thoughts. As far as I can remember, the subject of serious police brutality, although Donut's fingers being broken is pretty nasty, is rarely explored in The Wire, and we certainly never see citywide riots flare up. Additionally, I came across this news, which is great timing for Season 3 as we enter the political arena of Baltimore, and he has sent a link basically saying that the ex-Baltimore mayor who inspired... It's an article about the ex-Baltimore mayor who inspired The Wire's Tommy Carcetti set to run against Clinton for Democratic nomination.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
Wow, okay.
So ex-Baltimore mayor coming into sort of a American party bid, a party leader bid.
Yeah, that's O'Malley, right? He's
Well, not a party leader, but it's a bit different in America, isn't it? But we won't get into that.
No, we've got enough of our own election going on at the moment. So
Yeah. Have you voted, Toby?
early. I got a week and a bit to go yet, but yeah.
I mean, are you
I
voting?
will be voting. I'll be taking an active role. What about yourself?
Taking an active role, walking to your polling station and putting a big card in a box.
You know, there's plenty of people,
Voting.
out there who don't vote. So you know, active,
Yeah,
inactive.
no, I sent off my postal.
Oh,
vote.
you've already
I did
done
a
it.
postal
Okay,
vote today.
cool.
So, yeah.
Are you going to be kind of working late, so you won't be able to get to the polling station, or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. No, well, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The last election in 2010, I was only a week old enough to vote, so I'm a little bit older and wiser now. So, yeah. Anyway, we have how many emails do we have this week? Thanks very much for.
Yeah, that's pretty much the end of Dan's. Oh, he also mentions that he writes music as well. So I'll definitely. Thanks for listening to my stuff, Dan. I appreciate it. And send me a link. I'll probably reply to this email as well, but I'll say it here as well. Send me a link to your stuff as well, because I'll have a listen. So yeah, it's quite a long message from Dan. Thanks for that email, Dan. That was great.
Yeah, cheers.
We got one from Alfred as well, who has emailed us a couple of times in the past. He just sent a link, and it says, interesting to hear the tactical situation develop. And what he sent me is, I believe, the radio scanner for Baltimore City Police. It's like an online stream of all these like police radios, and you can pick the city in America that you want. You can just listen to the radio chatter of the police. I think it's live. I think.
Wow, that's not bad, is it? Is that?
It's fascinating, and it like plays this like ambient music in the background. It's like this. It's a site sort of dedicated to playing ambient music and listening to police scanners at the same time.
Bloody hell!
It's a very unusual concept. It's nice though.
That does sound really, really odd. I'm going to be checking that out, definitely.
Yeah, thanks for that, Alfred. That's really cool.
So I'm sure it must be very active at the moment in Baltimore with all the stuff going down.
Yeah. We also got a couple of emails. I did have a brief email conversation with a guy called Matt, who emailed us in a few days ago now. He discovered the podcast recently as well. He said that it coincides with a home DIY project. So he smashed through season 2 in 1 week. So I like to think of Matt sort of soaring away and painting and hammering nails in and just listening to us natter on about The Wire in the background.
Brilliant.
So yeah, glad he's enjoying it. He says that. In fact, I'll just quote it here. He says, for some reason, the Tweety impertinence line sprang to mind last week, so I got the DVD of that episode out and put it on. After watching that, I searched for Wire podcasts and happily stumbled across yours. Depending on timings, I've either rewatched a season 2 episode before or after listening and found that it works just as well either way. And then he goes on to correct himself. Actually, thinking about it, it's probably best to listen before watching, then you can see the bits/details you missed before. I don't know about you, but if I'm following a podcast through, I usually have watched it. I usually watch it before.
Yeah, definitely. I don't really remember lots of it if I just listen to the podcast without the context. It's like
But I guess it works differently for different people.
I think we do focus quite heavily on lots of sort of little things that we notice. So I think in that sense, it may be better working the other way around with our podcast, so you can go in and see those things for yourself. But I, as you say, I prefer to listen afterwards, definitely.
Matt also mentions that he agrees that after when he watched season 2 the first time, he thought it was the weakest season. And says that he's watched it another 2 times and now thinks it's one of the strongest.
Yeah.
Particularly due to the performances of James Ranson and Chris Bauer. Obviously Ziggy and Frank Spock.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, 2 of the best performances in the whole show.
Yeah, really mirrors our views, definitely.
We had a couple of... he also says that he has a cat named Omar. He has like a black cat named Omar. I love cats, so...
Oh, there we go.
So a cat and a sort of wire-themed name.
One of Tom's best mate's dads, I believe, has a couple of little pug dogs, and he's called them McNulty and Bunk, which I think is a fantastic pet duo. So
McNulty!
I think Bunk works slightly better, actually. I'm sure he's the top dog.
I was actually sort of going for that as well. I was just proving that shouting out McNulty is a bit of a strange... It's an unusual name for a dog, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, he also sent me... Matt also sent me a link talking about a brief history of the greatest Twitter hashtag of all time. I don't know if you know about this, but apparently there's a point on Twitter... This seems to be quite some time back, because this article is from 2010. That was 5 years ago, blimey. And it's talking about this Twitter hashtag that was based on sort of horse names, like not jockey names, but like the names of the horses in horse racing, obviously, and having sort of wire-themed names. So having names like Snoop's Nail Gun, Where's Wallace, Vondus Vondopoulos, Yura all these different names. So there's all these people on Twitter coming up with all of these names. The Sunday Truce.
That's
the
good.
cheese stands alone.
Yeah.
One of them is that's some Spider-Man shit right there.
Yeah, there's a lot of variety you can go for with the horse names. All of them seem to fit, don't they? And it's just the way horse racing works. And
and of course there's a section just for Clay Davis.
Yeah. How many E's can you fit onto one shit?
Depends. Well, it's 140 characters in a tweet, so you gotta spare some for the S and H and I and T, but it depends how many of them you want.
I think you have to go with maybe
a
few I's and lots of E's. I think that's the best form of shit.
It depends which version you want to do, because there's different ones and they're all emphasised differently. So.
Yeah, but we still have to,
because there's a couple in season 3.
I think we got our first real one in 4 when Sidney goes to pay a little visit, and it's undeniable.
Major crimes.
It's undeniable that he was, not being purposeful about it, or being very purposeful with his shit. So
they're magical. They're a really magical part of the show.
I think we might have to invite a special guest just for the first shit episode when that does arrive, just to announce its importance.
Did I show you before that video of someone's put a vocoder effect on one of the scenes, one of the Clay Davis shits.
Kind of like auto-tuning.
They put like a vocoder on it and turned it into like a little tune.
I've seen quite a few YouTube rehashes of that, but I've not seen an auto-tune one, so you'll have to send that over to me.
Yeah. He also says that he's seen Generation Kill. I was wondering if there's anybody who watched this show that's seen that, because obviously James Ranson's in it as Private Person, I think it's called.
Okay.
Or Corporal Person, one of the two.
Yeah.
Apparently he's also in Treme.
Oh, right.
And he asks if he watched Treme. He says he liked it because of the depth of the characters, but in total didn't take it as much more than a love letter to New Orleans. Nothing wrong with that, though. So, yeah, I didn't watch that much of Treme.
I've seen the first couple episodes. It feels very David Simon. It feels very well done, but it didn't grab me at all, unfortunately. Nor did The Wire the first time, but then again, I was told to persevere with it for how great it was. But you never hear the same reverence for Treme, definitely. So there's not kind of that urgency to go and watch it, but maybe someday.
Yeah, so it was kind of somewhat enjoyable to watch, but nothing really happened in it, if you know what I mean. There wasn't really any I don't know, just nothing really happened in it.
It's like is the aftermath of what had happened, really, wasn't it? And it was just it's very.
It's just a viewpoint onto a particular culture.
Yeah, very wondering, and it depends whether you want lots and lots of musical interludes in your shows or not. I'm not sure I was a big fan of those, despite how great the music was. So.
Yeah, I loved all the musical bits. They were kind of nice, but again, it did kind of like made you kind of think about what you were watching. And you're like, is this a drama? Is it it's sort of semi-documentary? And I get that, but it's also meant to be a drama, and there's not a whole lot of drama going on. It's a bit confusing to watch.
Appreciated that.
I think if I gave it more of a chance, I'd like it. But
yeah, I think it's not too long, is it? It's only 5 seasons, and I think the 5th season was like 5 episodes or something very, very short, like real HBO shortchanging. So it's definitely something that I could do. It's not it's not a big undertaking like Lost or anything like that. So maybe one day.
So let's close the door softly on Listener's Corner. We have emails this week from Dan, Alfred, and Matt. Thank you to all of you.
Thanks very much. Keep them coming.
So how's... in fact, you mentioned Mad Men. Before we move on to talk a little bit more about what's going on in Baltimore right now, how are you... did mean to ask you, how are you finding Mad Men, the new season?
Yeah. For some time now, Mad Men's been a bit different. I think season 4 was the last really great season. And ever since then, the show's been a bit meandering. It's just changed a bit. It's still enjoyable, and I'm deep enough in that I do want to finish it. So I'm just kind of going through. It's the 7.2. It's like the AMC season splits that they've been doing recently. So it's season 7, or you could call it season 8, and it doesn't really feel like we're going towards an end here. It feels like it's still meandering, and there's no sense of destination. But since there are only about 4 episodes left, I'm going to stick it out. And it's. I mean, as a non-Mad Men watcher, there's not a lot I could say, I guess, but it's definitely worth watching for the first 4 seasons. I can highly recommend those, and if you do enjoy, keep it going to the end. So it's pretty enjoyable. Did you watch anything of particular this week? Did you see any movies or anything like that? Or
I watched the new Adam Curtis documentary, Bitter Lake.
Okay.
Do you know Adam Curtis? I think I showed you one of his documentaries.
Possibly, yeah.
It's got a very, very kind of stylistic, very stylistic documentaries. Always have a sense of foreboding about them. I think they're not particularly interesting. They're not a particularly great way of viewing exactly what's happening in the world and why. They're not very pure documentaries. They're quite sort of. It's quite hard to explain. They kind of feel like haunted videotapes in a way. There's a lot of eerie effects and long lingering shots, and Adam Curtis himself, the way he speaks and the way he talks about things, he always says about how things are a fantasy, and in reality this was happening, and it's always about how horrific stuff is. And they're very quite depressing documentaries. Yeah. And I watched his new one, Bitter Lake, which is all about supposedly about how the world is too confusing for anyone to make sense of it, and that politicians are simplifying it, but in the same way making it sort of impossible to understand or something. It's not a very clear idea for a documentary.
Heady subject. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't find it particularly pleasing as a documentary. It just felt like a bit more of an art installation, something you might see at a gallery or something. It didn't really come across much as a particularly solid documentary. Sometimes he just says things and they're just hyperbole, and then it'll accompany it with a picture of a city, and it will be all shrouded in darkness, and it will look very ominous. And meanwhile, Adam Curtis will be going, "But this was a fantasy, because in reality, they were all trying to blow up the world." And it's all just kind of, you buy into it because of his hypnotizing voice. But I'm not sure they're particularly good documentaries. So I was a bit disappointed with Bitter Lake. I thought it was just confusing and
nice dose of
overly, a little bit pretentious, maybe.
Scaremongering. Okay.
Yeah, scaremongering is definitely the word to use.
Okay, cool. No, I dropped him for Les Mis this week, Les Miserables, or however you want to pronounce it in French. Something that I did want to see when it came out back in, I think it was January 2 years ago, actually, scarily enough, 2013.
This is the film Russell Crowe, Anne Hathaway.
Right, yeah, it's very star-studded. Russell Crowe, Anne Hathaway, a bit of Hugh Jackman in there, a bit of Man of the Hour, Eddie Redmayne. So and Amanda Seyfried. So it's got all sorts going on. I was very impressed, actually. I didn't expect much from a musical film, but it seems to be in a different league of its own as far as musicals go. It just isn't prone to cheese at all. It really feels quite premium, and it spends a long time really closing in on the characters' faces as they sing, which is a very unusual way of kind of experiencing a musical, which is nice. You really get to feel the emotion. And long film, but I was very impressed with the story, and the actual acting and emotion conveyed in the songs is very, very moving. And Anne Hathaway particularly is absolutely fantastic. She completely earns her Oscar, despite some very brief appearances in the film, really. Absolutely. So I'll definitely recommend checking that out. I was pleasantly surprised.
I hear there's a lot of waterworks in it.
Oh, in terms of lots of how.
In terms of the flowing of tear ducts.
Oh, okay, absolutely. Yes, yeah, you can certainly describe it like that. Anna Kendrick kind of cries for England. So, yeah, really, really enjoyable, good story, lots of stars, and Russell Crowe can sing, I think. I know there's a big debate over that, but I think he certainly gets away with it. I know that some slightly harsh critics did completely crucify this film, saying that, this is the realm of musical theatre. None of these actors are professional kind of show, real trained singers. But I think for what it is, it works very well. And none of the.
Well, it's an adaptation, isn't
Yeah.
it? I mean, it's always going to be the way. People always complain about anything being translated into any other medium because it's not exactly the same. Well, funny that, because it's not
Yeah.
the same medium, so it's not going to be the same.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's not like it was in the book. Well, it's not a book. Like, it has different limitations and different strengths, and is able to emphasize certain elements more, and even more than just the obvious, like, it's TV, you can see it, it's a book, you have to kind of imagine it in your head, so to speak. Like, yeah, it's kind of, I always find it a little bit redundant to complain that it's not exactly the same as it is in the medium, because, well, it's not the same medium, so it's not going to be.
No, you got to leave some room for changing things up.
So you can't really judge a film like that in the same way that you would judge the theatre show. It's not a theatre show.
No, certainly not. I'm not even tempted to go and see the theatre show after seeing the movie, to be honest. Hearing that it's 3.5 hours, and you really feel like the value in that movie is the visual aids that you get, the really, really soaring landscapes, and despite all the close-ups, when the film needs to, it really does kind of go and show you the scope of all the French Revolution and stuff like that. So it's all of that ropes me in, and the concept of going to a 3.5 hour musical production on the stage with that same music doesn't really appeal to me at all. So
Not a man for opera then, Toby.
no, you wouldn't find me in one of those. Yeah.
All right. Well, I can't think of anything else I've watched this week of note, particularly.
Maybe episode 1 of season 3 of The Wire.
Oh no, I forgot to watch that. Damn it.
Damn it. Well, should we jump into our recap?
Right, that's the end of the show. Goodbye, everyone.
Well, just in case you did remember to watch it, I did write a recap.
40
actually.
minutes of preamble. No episode. Sorry.
Yeah.
You did remember to watch it. That's good. That's
and
good.
because you didn't, I wrote you a recap so you can join in with me as I discuss it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a listener instead. You can do the podcast.
Well, 40 minutes it is. Jeez, I really hope we're not here till midnight. But we're now jumping into our no less than 15 sections recap. It's no secret that things are really, really splitting up into different factions here. We introduce a new institution, the political realm, and that's not just one scene. Like, the politics covers a few people. It covers Royce, the mayor. It covers Carcetti. It also covers Marla Daniels, who has a kind of smaller arc throughout the politics. So we really are going to be going all over the place with this. But I think I've got it nestled down into a nice few chunks. And are you ready to kind of jump in with me here, Alex?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, okay. Right, well, let's go. I'm going to start off as the episode does with the politics strand, and we have here The first scene, Mayor Clarence Royce leads the demolition of the West Side's high-rise housing projects. Meanwhile, Bodie, Poot and Puddin reminisce about their days working in and living around the 221 tower just before it's demolished. They catch the end of Royce's speech, claiming that the destruction of the towers will be good for the community and is a sign of his administration's commitment to reform. The speech is well received, but as the dust cloud envelops the audience, the applause falters.
So we're back into a sense of familiarity here, seeing as there was such a departure with season 2 going onto the docks, and all the familiarity from season 1 came largely from the street. I think season 3 puts us firmly back with characters we know very well.
Yeah.
And this is the first appearance of Royce. Am I right?
That's
in
right.
saying
He's
that?
been mentioned numerous times, never by name, but as mayor. But yeah, this is the first time we actually see him.
And there's, I think, quite a telling intercut between Bodie sort of chastising Poot for having all of his memories in these towers of girls that he slept with that just gave him some kind of venereal disease.
Yeah.
Obviously getting burnt. And actually, it's the epigraph, isn't it? About don't matter how many times you get burnt, you just keep doing the same.
That's right, yeah.
And then this is obviously intercut with Royce's speech about his commitment to reform and how things are gonna. He's really gonna make there be change.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it seems like Bodie is almost saying something about Royce here, and it doesn't matter how many times you believe these politicians, and you keep getting sucked into it, and nothing ever changes. Like,
Yeah, you could certainly say
it
that.
seems like there's a bit of a message being given out there.
I like the contrast between their speech patterns as well. You have Bodie's real free-flow, naturalistic kind of banter side by side with the very measured rhetoric of Royce. So it's nice to see those, and that they do seem to be commenting on one another, certainly. Nothing in The Wire is kind of a parallel by mistake, I think.
I think you can tell quite well on, which is a testament to the performance. I've forgotten the name of the actor who plays Royce.
Glyn Turman, I believe. Glyn Turman, I think, yeah.
Glyn Turman.
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah, it's a testament to the quality of the performance that you can tell quite quickly that he's quite experienced with the role. He's been mayor for some time. Like, he's got the mayoral thing down. And he alludes to the fact that this is somewhat into his term.
Yeah.
Because it's talking about people sticking with him and, like, he's committed to his reform and all this sort of stuff. So
It's not just a watchword, it's a philosophy. Yeah, but
and more than a little bit of a 9/11 reference.
yes, certainly with those red lights and the all that unexpected smoke. Yeah, so it was.
Yeah, all the dust coming in and people like covering their faces, and it all goes a bit sort of eerily quiet, and there's all this dust, and yeah, it's
and
it's definitely something going on there. First of many, I would say, in the season.
yeah, I mean, David Simon has described this season as can be read as a big metaphor for the Iraq War and the American response to it. And obviously, with this scene coming before the credits of the first episode, kind of announces the start of that. If you want to look at it like that, which is nice. Yeah, so I thought it was a great scene. I love the height of summer that we're starting in. It's a nice kind of bright, optimistic way to look in the season. Kind of gets the reform feeling a little bit more genuine. And I did like how each of the three hoppers has a different stance on the impending tumble of the towers. And Bodie looks at it kind of with the string of pragmatism. It's just, it's moving on to something different, very open to the idea of the reform. And then Poot kind of really has the nostalgia angle, mainly sexual, of course, but still. And Puddin just sort of sees it as a home that's lost. It's just more of a functional view of it. So it's nice to see all that. And it's just, I think the towers falling as well is just a nice visual transition for us. We're going from a period of Barksdale dominance throughout seasons 1 and 2 into a new order that's about to start emerging. And I like the lack of a dominant force on the street this season. It's a real transition zone. Seasons 4 and 5, it's very much a Stanfield kind of management.
There's the reign,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's like the
Yeah.
reign of whoever
Absolutely.
whoever is overseeing the drug
It's like
trade,
an administration in itself, isn't it? The Stanfield administration. And
Yeah, absolutely.
this season we're going between them. So it's nice that those towers are kind of signalling that to us.
And I like the fact that we see Royce pressing down on that plunger, and then we see the workman or the guys dealing with the demolition. He kind of points to that other guy who flicks the actual plunger.
Yeah, so the mayor has no real control, does he? Despite this,
Shows that he has no real power.
Despite the illusion. Yeah.
It's great.
Brilliant. So, and it's probably not worth going through without mentioning the special effects. I don't know what you make of them. It's the only time that The Wire really obviously uses some CGI, I think. I'm sure there are some CGI towers and stuff in previous seasons, but they're not particularly noticeable this time around. The Wire's low budget, I think, is fairly sort of worn on its sleeve. So.
Yeah, it's definitely cut a little slim, basic stuff going on there. In season 1, there are some like CGI towers.
Yeah,
and they don't look very good, but it doesn't really. I guess it doesn't really like affect the show. You don't really notice it.
No,
so.
it doesn't. It doesn't look too bad actually at all. So
it's never really in any moments where I can't think of any moments where the sort of lack of realism on the part of special effects or anything like hindered the drama of the show.
No, not at all. I mean, this is the closest it comes, but it doesn't
like
go over the line certainly. Okay, so that's our opening. Should we move on to our second?
I was also going to mention quickly
Yeah,
that
sure.
the big dust cloud that sort of hits them, in a way it feels like comeuppance.
Yeah.
Something about it feels like sort of blowback, like they're getting what they deserved.
Yeah, definitely.
Whatever that is.
We will find out.
So yeah, let's move on to the next section.
Okay, so Councilman Tommy Carcetti and Tony Gray preside over a police department review meeting. They grill Burrell, who is now the acting... he was the acting commissioner last season, actually, and the new deputy commissioner, William Rawls, about increased violent crime in the Eastern, and learn that they have reassigned the Flex Squad and other local units to patrol at high crime rate times of day. Marla has the ear of State Delegate Odell Watkins as they observe the meeting. Afterwards, Carcetti asks Burrell out to lunch. Gray comments on the presence of Watkins, and Carcetti asks if he has recognised Daniels. At their lunch, Carcetti regales Burrell with political tales of hard-nosed Baltimore Democrats from the 1st District. Carcetti offers Burrell help if the mayor shorts him on funding and support, as he can use the crime review subcommittee that he chairs to help Burrell. Burrell tells him that he believes in chain of command and is loyal to Royce. Burrell later tells fellow African-American officer Major Reed on the audacity of Carcetti's approach, claiming, "What can a white councilman give me that a black mayor can't?"
Carcetti is built up as the underdog quite well immediately, isn't he, in a way? This kind of like the little man who would be king almost.
Yeah.
And the fact that his first maneuver politically is unsuccessful, and sort of Burrell really shuts him down there. You really feel the veterancy of Burrell and the influence that he has, given that he's achieved that acting commissioner role.
Yeah.
Well, immediately Carcetti is shut down and he's put into our favour as the audience.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, he instantly becomes an underdog. But equally, Royce's administration constantly relies on the city's demographic makeup as their safety blanket, which is, a short-sighted manoeuvre as we see later on. So it kind of works both ways. But they certainly drill those messages from the start, don't they?
And it makes his successes later on, particularly in season 4, feel really complete. Like you've really seen that transition.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I feel like Carcetti wasn't that interesting to me in season 3, as he wasn't really doing anything. He wasn't causing any major change. But I think that in hindsight, the time you spend with him here really does add to the gravitas of what happens later. So it's an important stepping stone. So I mean, there's a few things that happens in this section. And Carcetti is introduced. He informs us of Rawls' promotion to deputy ops, and where he will stay for the rest of the show in terms of that position. And we also meet Delegate Watkins for the first time, which is a very important character, a very influential politician, really. So it's good to see all those. And what I think is quite cleverly done about this episode is that we meet loads of new characters again, like the start of last season. But they're all mostly introduced in the context of well-established characters, so we kind of instantly understand them a little bit more and where they stand. And that's why I think there's less disorientation this time round. it's quite impressive how many new characters are introduced compared to season 2. We have Colvin, who's introduced through Herc and Carver's move to the Western. We have Carcetti, who's introduced in a meeting with Rules and Burrell. We instantly understand the role he plays. Watkins is introduced with Marla, who we know as Daniels' very ambitious politician wife, and Cutty's introduced in the context of Avon and Weebay, Slim Charles with the Stringer. So everyone kind of is already attached to the institution, which is nice, and it makes things much easier to grasp onto early on. So
And Marlowe with Bubbles and Johnny.
yes, yeah, very true. Very, very true. Whereas last time, it kind of just instantly, here's the docs, guys. Watch these guys. Like, it's just kind of, it's much more of its own thing, and you have to really dedicate some attention to learning how it all works.
It's also worth noting, too, that following on from what you're saying about introducing these new characters, visually they're very nicely done as well, because the Marlowe introduction, he steps out of the door to be framed by this like circle around him, is framed by the arm of the man pointing the gun at Bubbles and Johnny. Always, I think it's Bubbles that he has or Johnny that he has on the car, and he's like pointing the gun over, and then it creates this like ring in which Marlowe's face is framed, which is really nice.
Yeah, that is true, yeah.
It kind of gives that great line, do it or don't, but I got a place to be.
Yeah, again, another character who's been carved out properly from the start. His mandate remains steadfast right through to the end of season 5, so...
And then with Carcetti, when we're there in that meeting, obviously part of this strand we're talking about, I like how the camera seems to rotate around him, but from quite a distance, and you slowly begin to realise who the camera is rotating around, even though there's a bunch of people on this panel. You can kind of see that they've emphasised Carcetti, put him in the middle of the frame, and they're rotating the camera just this little bit from a bit of a distance, and you slowly, your eyes caught by this character in the middle.
Yeah.
It's very subtly done. I really liked that
That's
shot.
a very good point, actually.
The Wire does it in a couple of situations where they'll rotate slowly from a distance around a character, and gradually you'll begin to see where the focus lies.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I hadn't noticed that, because the very first scene, or very first shot of this scene, is Rules and Burrell walking into the committee room, and we assume it's going to be a scene about them. And then it's only subtly that we realise that the scene's actually all, it's kind of rotated around Carcetti, or it's fixed around Carcetti. So it's nice to see that the show kind of subtly draws our attention towards that.
Absolutely, yeah. And then we have do we include the Comstat meeting in this?
No, the Comstat will come later, but we do include the lunch with Burrell and Carcetti, where we see Burrell's horrid attempts to find Carcetti's stories funny. Ha ha ha, that is good. I'm just kind of, oh dear, quite cringe. but yeah, so it's just kind of...
Felt like quite a tropey scene, that, in a way.
Yeah.
Having lunch, doing a bit of political manoeuvring,
all
and
these stories,
telling these stories of old, so I says to this guy, it's all kind of that sort of thing.
So kind of Goodfellas-y, isn't it? I know what you mean.
People laughing way louder than you actually do when you're in a place like that, because you're surrounded by lots of people that are trying to have their lunch.
Yeah. I do agree that the whole storytelling thing, I mean, the stories don't quite make sense to us either. I can't quite grasp what's being said.
They're meant to be
a little bit kind of
in jokes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
esoteric.
Yeah. But we do see Carcetti getting his claws in straight away, and kind of launching his campaign pad. 10% bumping crime is business as usual. Why we're losing residents. Instantly getting those reform themes out on the table. And then, of course, kind of putting Burrell into a sticky situation by saying, if the mayor shorts you, I can sort you out. And once I've sorted you out, you'll be forever in my debt. And you'll be my bitch. So we see Burrell obviously in a bit of a sticky spot.
Yeah.
And it's clear from the start as well that Carcetti probably has a massive double motivation. It's not really about the city, but just as much about the city as it is about him. And Irv's reaction to the lunch kind of clearly points to this as well. So, yeah, overall pretty good. Should we move on to the Comstat stuff?
Yes, let's move on.
Okay, so I do apologise. This is going to be by far the biggest one. So I'm going to hold your breath for a little bit. Rules holds a Comstat meeting and berates Major Marvin Taylor of the Eastern for treating a spate of robberies in his district as separate incidents. Colvin expresses sympathy for Taylor to Mello. At the next subcommittee meeting, Carcetti has filled the room with press. Burrell meets with the mayor and his chief of staff Coleman Parker about Carcetti's actions. Parker speculates that Carcetti is preparing for a run at the mayor's seat as Carcetti's district is getting his share of funds and representation in Baltimore politics, and his ambitions are exceeding the district's needs. Royce scoffs at the idea, claiming, "Not my chair, not in this town." Royce believes that Carcetti has no chance of winning the mayoral election, given the fact Baltimore's African-American majority. So Parker, however, sees the crime rates that have risen under Royce's administration and claims that Carcetti will exploit the figures as his campaign foundation. Burrell then asks if they are able to call Carcetti off, where Parker then claims that Royce's administration are not able to negotiate favours with people from Carcetti's district, a majority-white ethnic section of Baltimore, which has a history of voting against Baltimore's African-American politicians. So out of options, they pressure Burrell to keep the crime stats down, citywide by 5% and overall under 275 murders for the year. Burrell agrees as a means of preventing Carcetti from continuing to draw negative attention. At the next Comstat meeting, Burrell tells his men to cut the felony by 5% and reduce this murder rate. Raymond Forster, who's now a colonel in charge of the CID, including the homicides, dismayed at the directive. Rules gives us some stats about New York and Baltimore, and Major Colvin, realising how the commanders have been encouraged to water down their crime figures as the only measure to make these stats work, states, "Can you reclassify an aggravated assault unfound a robbery, but how do you make a body disappear?" So Burrell responds with a threat of replacing district commanders who cannot provide the numbers they need, and then Valchek asks Colvin what got into him, and Colvin tells us that he's standing up to Rules because he's about to retire and has not much to lose. So
yeah, pretty
epic moment. Yeah.
So that's the Comstat meeting, then the meeting with the mayor. There's Coleman Parker, the chief of staff.
That's right, he's a mainstay.
And Burrell, and they have a little meeting, the subcommittee meeting, and then following that, there's the other Comstat meeting.
That's right. Yeah, that's it.
So we kind of have this sandwich of things going on.
Yeah, I mean, Comstat's a great element of season 3, and it really shows us how the pressure is applied down the chain. It gives us the most visceral look at that chain of command and action. And we see why there is so little room for creativity in the department and change for good when these snap decisions and instantaneous measures that save face are the only ones that are acceptable to the bigwigs. Otherwise, you are fired. They'll find people who will replace you. It's a very, very mercenary way to run a public service, but that's kind of what they need to do. So yeah, it's quite hard to watch, really.
And thus far, in the show, we've seen people being berated more one-on-one, whereas here there's like a crowd aspect and we see them almost like vying for position, and Colvin even says better him than us. You see a slightly different dynamic when it's like all of them together in this room, and like you say, it's how these orders are being disseminated amongst the ranks and being passed down, and we've seen a lot of things coming down from on high in the context of a small number of characters, and normally the people receiving those orders. Now we're seeing orders being given to the people who also give orders.
Yeah.
And on a larger scale. So yeah, the Comstat meetings are, like you say, a good element of this season. We see it a couple of times, don't we? It's a recurring event.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's. I think it crops up again in season 5 for the homeless, but it's a really kind of nice missing piece so far that we get to see now as the world expands. And there really is the feeling that there's no way to win in these Comstat meetings. The game is completely rigged against you, more so than anywhere else, really. And Rules seems to pick holes and play devil's advocate, to whatever you say. You might come up with a completely legitimate response to something, but Rules will just ask you about why you didn't use the other response. It's just kind of a completely, kind of just dead end street, really.
Everything to do with the department's running seems to be entirely based on coercion more than anything else. There's not a lot of sort of logical decision making going on. It's all just a lot of weird coercion based on the influence of political maneuvers.
Putting pressure on people to perform and scaremongering rather than real kind of constructive, policing and management. It's quite scary, really, and
it shows how that idea is insidious, because it starts with, say, the mayor who makes some demand, and we even see that Royce makes that number, the 275. He just seems to pick it out of the air. I mean, he's talking about the number of people being murdered, and he's just like, 275. It's incredible how trite he makes it sound. And that gets passed down into this weird system of almost bullying people in to get it, because the big man up top, that's what he wants.
He makes it sound like Burrell can go back to the police computer and go into the system and turn the murder slider down to 275, and that'll make everything. It's just
like it's some graphics option where it turns the blood down. Like, nah, not that much. That would do. That's a reasonable amount. That's an okay amount of violence. Yeah,
it's not something that can be controlled at all. And well, I mean, you can put in preventative measures technically, but I think you need to worry more about other things first. I think Baltimore Police Department has bigger problems than that at the moment. So, it's kind of crazy how they do pick that out of thin air.
Yeah, and it's another key theme in The Wire as a whole is desensitization to that kind of horror.
Yeah,
having huge murder rates. I mean, doesn't he say something like in the Comstat meeting? Rules says something along the lines of that if Baltimore had New York City's population, it would have like 4,000 murders.
4,000 murders a year, absolutely, yeah.
4,000 murders annually, yeah. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. So I think it was clocking around, what was it, 300 or so, 400 when the show was on. I'm not sure what it is now. I think it has reduced, but it is. It's a fantastic fact, which I think.
That reminds me that we didn't talk about the Baltimore riots.
I'm sure we'll find a place to pop them in.
We'll do that. We'll do that at the end. We'll do it at the end.
We'll do that when Tree gets woofed. Oh no, someone gets woofed in this episode. So. I'm
going to write it on a post-it note so that when it comes to our final sections, we remember to talk about it. Okay. Yeah. So where were we?
I was just sort of commenting. You get the sense that the way Colvin speaks to Dennis Mello as well, it's like they kind of take it in turns to berate different majors. And you sense that at the moment it's Marvin's turn, and next it might be Valchek's, and then it might be Colvin's, and all the rest of it. So there's that element to it as well. And then, of course, Carcetti brings along stage 2 when Burrell rejects his first proposal. He just brings the press in and pretend that what's going on is a bigger issue than usual. Although I guess it is good timing because 5 murders occurred the previous night. He kind of has his headline right there. It's fortunate timing for Carcetti.
Yeah.
So. And
Bunny decides to. We see a very telling moment of Bunny's personality. Well, we see a lot of that in this episode. Obviously, him being mostly introduced, although he did appear briefly in season 2. We really get a moment with his personality where he stands up to rules like that, and how he doesn't care because he's got his retirement coming up, and he's willing to make more of a stand and make a kind of bit of a jab at rules about how do you make a murder disappear. Trying to force rule, obviously rule's not going to say anything, but in a way it suggests that whole idea of they know exactly what they're doing. They know that they're juking the stats. Yeah. They know that they're treating it with this bizarre kind of disdain of having to deal with the numbers rather than all of these people that are dying.
And when Burrell says those who can't bring in the numbers will be replaced, that's the closest they come to explicitly saying, look, we know it's a tough world out there, but if you juke the stats, we're happy. It's got to that point.
Shining up shit and calling it gold.
Yep, we've been here since season 1. Definitely. So it's good to see that. I don't know if there's anything else to talk about in this section. I thought it was quite funny to see Major Colonel Forster even just kind of sort of withering away at the commands from above. Christ. Always makes me laugh, that little moment.
He does seem to have been purposefully put there to be completely ineffective.
Yeah. And we see he's a character.
He does seem like a bit of a wet lettuce, doesn't he?
Definitely. Yeah, he's a character who seems to be completely absent from season 2 as well, a bit like Sidner.
We let them know who we are.
And who the fuck are we?
Yeah, and who are we?
Yeah, so I think that kind of covers it all, really. I think this is the scene that sets up Colvin's motivation for the season, really, as well. That's the main thing to take away from it, I think. So, yeah, okay. All right, just two more little politicky ones. Actually, no, one more politicky one, sorry. And this is a very short one. So, Daniels attends a meeting at his home with Marla's political contacts, including Watkins. Once they have left, Marla thanks him and he returns to sleep at the office.
So it was already a given that Marla and Cedric weren't going to be staying together in terms of a romantic relationship. But the show still has a little bit of a tease here, I think, where it sort of slowly reveals that we're sort of brought into the room with them to see all of these political figures there, and it's revealed that it's obviously just a big charade, and it's quite honourable still of Daniels to repay the favour, and we see that he's obviously very loyal in that sense.
Yeah.
After all the times that she was vouching him during his rise, it's obviously emphasised that he had quite a quick rise. So, yeah, very very honourable of Daniels, and interesting that the show teases you as it brings you into that room and clearly reveals that the facade is they're really going for it now. They're not hiding behind anything. There's no ambiguity about why their relationship lies. No,
but they're kind of pragmatics to the end, aren't they? They're still they do have some sort of begrudging respect for one another. So it's good to see that. I don't know if it came across as particularly genuine when he was introduced to the political bunch, but I think it worked for what it does. They just need to be the picture postcard couple for all the election literature and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that someone makes a comment to one of them makes a comment to Marla, something about having Cedric with you in that photo was great, looked great on the something.
Yeah, looked great on the campaign posters. Yeah,
offside, and it just shows where the mind is at. It's kind of looking good and really focusing on the public relations.
It's just another way of duking the stats, isn't it? It's falsifying something to get you somewhere better. So
this isn't quite as morally
no,
reprehensible,
certainly not. But it's
somewhat understandable. I mean, you're a public figure. You kind of people want to see someone who's sort of squeaky clean and fits this nice, safe surroundings. Any chaos or disruption or aberration in a politician's life is sort of immediately seen as a massive sign of weakness.
Yeah, certainly.
Why we judge politicians to be that perfect, I don't really understand. I've never quite understood that. But we certainly don't judge ourselves to that level. No. If we held ourselves as accountable as we did the politicians,
God, yeah,
maybe it wouldn't be so bad. What's that old saying? We judge. We judge ourselves by our intentions, but others by their actions.
Yeah, that's very true.
Thought for the day. Maybe.
Lovely. Oh,
so let's move on to the next section.
I was quickly going to squeeze in our chat about the Daniels Perlman stuff in this bit as well.
Yes.
So I like that the episode does a fair bit to set up their imminent romance, and they're telling Lee alone quite a few times in the detail office when everyone else clears out. And we don't get to see all their conversations, but we do get to kind of see a couple of brief seconds of some sort of chemistry. And there's
some wandering eyes.
Yes, definitely. And some concern for Cedric's living out of the office situation. And actually willing to bring it up. A lot of people kind of see that and just not mention it, but she does want to challenge him on it with an impending pounce. So it's nice to see that, and it's been something that's subtly been built up since the very start of the show. Actually, that we've seen there's this kind of chemistry between the two of them.
Actually, I think of all the times throughout the show, this is probably sort of thinking offhand here, but it seems like I felt more sorry for Daniels here than I have at any other point.
Yeah.
Normally he's put into a position of strength, and we kind of see how he's a strong leader and he's learnt from his mistakes, and we don't normally see him down on his luck, apart from this bit with Marla. But in a way that makes sense to us. We're not really introduced to some wonderful romantic relationship that he's lost. It's never really put that way. But here, when we see that he's sleeping out of the office, and he kind of looks into their room later on, and sort of has a moment to himself where he sighs, and we have to see him put this fakery in front of the political figures in their front room. I feel quite sorry for Daniels here.
Yeah.
That's what makes his relationship with Perlman so kind of heartwarming, I guess.
Yeah, no,
kind of comes good for him at last.
Definitely, I'd certainly agree with you that this is one of the only times we really see Daniels in some sort of trough. He doesn't wear it at all on his sleeve at work, but we get to see a little bit behind the scenes here.
He's a professional.
But things do turn around for him very quickly, which is nice. So
yeah.
Okay, so that's the end of our politics, sexual politics as well as Baltimore politics, and we now move on to our major case unit, which is going to be our longest section. So we'll start off with Jimmy and Sidner, who are taking up a surveillance post in a vacant building and observing Cheese. At the detail office, Lester, Prez, and a new addition, Officer Caroline Massey, man a wiretap. When a drug dealer calls to arrange a meeting with Cheese about a bet, Massey is the most skilled at interpreting the slang used. Sidner observes that Cheese does not use a phone, instead conducting his business face-to-face and receiving his telephone messages through his number 2. Freeman states that they have been working the investigation for 3 months and have still not heard Cheese's voice. Freeman and Kima relieve McNulty and Sidner in the evening. When McNulty returns to the office, Rhonda and Daniels are discussing giving up on the wiretaps. McNulty believes that they must continue and will eventually reach Prop Joe and Stringer. He heatedly asserts that Bell is their target and that all other objectives are secondary. Daniels insists they need a break in the case to justify continued use of the wiretaps.
There's quite a few bits there then. So it was starting off with them observing Cheese. Maybe I'm reading this a little bit literally, but it did seem like as they were looking at Cheese out in the street between these two kind of slats, it kind of felt like we had the cheese being sandwiched by these two kind of slats the slit that we're seeing him through. It felt like the cheese was in a sandwich.
Cheesy. Yeah, that's cool. No, that is quite nice.
That's
yeah.
a bit of a silly one.
I do like that. It's something that I certainly didn't notice.
Just because he's there framed in that gap. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of interesting.
A bit of 50 Cent on the stereo.
Seeing Sidner again.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't show up at all in season 2.
He's not even mentioned in season 2. We just kind of launched into, after the credits, straight into kind of Sidner stepping on some dog shit.
So yeah, that's his introduction.
Yeah. You hope.
Stepped in dog shit.
So it's a weird jog of the memory for first-time viewers, as he was completely absent without explanation in season 2. And they're like, oh yeah, this guy. I remember being like that as he's brought straight back in. And they instantly kind of cement the idea that the investigation is ongoing. I think we're about a year ahead of season 2's ending. And it's a good way to shake any notion of procedure, having us wind up in the middle of an investigation rather than start developing a new one. The idea that life just goes on and the show's just observing hits home a bit more now that we can see it's just a procedure for them to be doing an investigation.
And also understanding that after season 2, if you're going to start another investigation right from the beginning again, you might start to wear your audience out a bit.
Yeah.
Sort of going, right, well, back to the beginning now. Now they have to go through this and that.
That's true.
I think the show is able to bypass that a little bit by putting us at a different stage of the investigation, and thus is able to throw in different problems. And
we can fill in the gaps as well, because we technically kind of saw the start of this investigation with McNulty and Kima last episode.
Exactly, yeah. It's that we talked about in the finale for season 2 about how they prep us for season 3. We kind of get a little bit of groundwork coming down, and then once we come into this first episode, we feel like we understand the context.
Yes, absolutely. So it's good to see that. And we see a new addition, Caroline Massey.
Seems to love her coupons.
Loves coupons and is great at slang.
Coupon cutting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And clearly they found someone that, even Prez was now not qualified for his slang interpretation job, as they found some real street slingers by the looks of it, and they need Massey to come and translate for them. So yeah, it's good to see that, and the detail is changing. Again, those procedural notions are being knocked aside as the detail kind of shifts and changes. And we also see McNulty's accent being quite wobbly again at the start of these seasons after he's had a year off.
Yeah. And another disappointment with McNulty here is the crappy catchphrase is back.
What the fuck did I do?
It's just not necessary.
Sometimes it works, but it was very obvious what he did wrong. Like, he was being too self-righteous, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like, what the fuck did
Yeah.
I do? You were just, like, lecturing everybody. I don't know if you remember that. It was, like, 20 seconds ago.
You somehow claimed that Stringer was your personal target and that the rest of the detail didn't matter. Right.
And that it sort of became everyone else's target as
Yeah.
well. Because it's what he wants, therefore it must be what everyone else wants.
Yeah, and then Freeman says very clearly what he's doing wrong. It's you against the world, is
just
it?
you
Yeah.
against the world.
And he's like, what did I do? Sorry? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just... That doesn't make me go, oh, Jimmy.
Yeah.
It just makes me go, oh, God, that again.
Oh, dear. I mean, you know, he holds in high esteem having the right target and doing the right police work. But, you know, there's not really any excuse for that rudeness.
So, yeah, that's it's an interesting little moment for McNulty there. Like you say, a bit of a slip in the accent too.
Yeah.
And that's a first of a couple of times in this season that we have Freeman getting a bit tougher with McNulty. He seems to tell him a few harsh truths here and there, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's certainly a bit of rivalry between these two, and I think ultimately Freeman wins because he does. I think there's that one quote that kind of inspires him to go and see Beatty, isn't it? It's the shit that happens while you're waiting for moments that never come. The life. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
A life, Jimmy.
Yeah. So it's a few wisdom nuggets is coming his way. It's kind of good to see McNulty on the case because you get the sense that the point investigation was really good for him. It gave him some direction and allowed him to channel his talents, but he wasn't obsessed with it or didn't feel like he had some revenge to dish out. Whereas this one,
Except for the floater.
yeah, true. I mean, the floater was kind of his personal. That was before he was on the case. Really, that was his personal kind of endeavor. But now that they're back on Stringer, it's bringing out the worst in him, really, and we see that he's beginning to bring back all of Daniels' worst insubordination memories from season 1, and he's beginning to having frictions with his team members. It's kind of overwhelming him and causing him to get angry as the case goes nowhere.
Yep. It's a bit of a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, it really is a bit of a peak and trough with McNulty, isn't it? Like season 1 is a bit of a trough for him, and then season 2 things look better. Season 3 they go right down, 4 they come right back up, and then 5 they just absolutely completely plummet. So
Yeah.
it's a real cycle for him. But the benefit of McNulty this time around is it does bring him closer to Kima, who are the two people that don't really have functional relationships outside of their work.
Yeah, their dotty home lives seems to give them a sense of solidarity.
Yeah, it's kind of jumping ahead a little bit, I guess, but that's certainly quite a big theme of, well, not theme, but certainly something that happens this season is the two of them spend a lot of time together. Yeah.
So I'm ready to move on to the next section, if you are.
Almost. There's one extra bit that wasn't in the recap, but does kind of feed into this. So it's at the end when McNulty starts looking back at what came before in the original investigation. When he looks up D'Angelo in the system.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they kind of overlay that with Colvin scouring the Western at the end of the episode, actually. So they're both kind of looking for trouble, I guess. But it's just interesting that McNulty has to find some way to kind of do something constructive, and everyone else can't understand it at all. But he's there, sort of reigning himself over all the case files,
Digging up the past, making a load of mess.
Yep.
Classic McNulty.
Oh dear. Yeah.
But then that does lead him on the trail of what happens to D'Angelo.
Yeah.
So there's kind of swings and roundabouts, I suppose.
Definitely. Okay, alright, so our 6th section. So McNulty, Greggs and Freeman observe a dealer named Drac, who's far less disciplined on the phone than Cheese and his people. Drac openly mentions drugs and McNulty wishes that he reported to someone more important. Freeman states that Drac is supplied by Lavelle Mann, one of Prop Joe's soldiers. Sidon has been developing a connection with him through undercover work. They plan to arrest Mann in the hope that Drac will be promoted and give them information on the organisation through his careless talk. Drac is likely to get the position because Prop Joe is his uncle. Okay, so...
Yeah, this is just a kind of fairly... Well, I don't know about standard, but it feels like this is just a moment of showing us of what's going on with the case, and what they're doing to try and build a bit of traction for their case.
Yeah, they spend a bit of time getting us comfortable with the bigger picture, and this is kind of their task for the week almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so... It leads to a few funny moments when Drac kind of voices cocaine loudly on the wire and other things. And it turns out his other nephew gets promoted in the end. Cheese, but that's kind of not known to the detail.
And another sort of classic wire shot, seeing something going on and then cutting to a new shot that's slowly zooming in on a car with a bunch of people or a couple of people in it taking photos and with binoculars and observing what we just saw. There's a lot of moments like that.
Yeah.
So just general kind of investigation, observation, detail stuff.
That is true.
And it's nice to have them. I guess, in a sense, that is the procedural part of The Wire, in a way. Having those little bits of how they're progressing a case and casework, basically.
Yeah.
You know? That's the procedural element of The Wire, the genuinely humdrum sitting and watching thing that's going on.
Definitely, yeah. It's still very, very fun to watch. To see how they do. But I mean, not overall a lot to say about this strand, really. Do you have anything to add about the whole Drac situation, or should we?
Not really, no.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sure. Let's move on. Okay, so number 7, Daniels takes the plan to Acting Commissioner Irvin Burrell, who's reluctant to fund more wiretaps. Burrell reports that while he has sent Daniels' promotion to the mayor is now holding it up because Daniels' wife Marla is set to challenge one of the mayor's allies in an upcoming election. Burrell tells Daniels that the mayor will not make him a commander until he knows where Marla stands politically. Yep, so that's number 7.
And Daniels finds out that his greasing of the pole, as it were, is only getting him so far. And now he's going to feel the downside of staying in this relationship with Marla, this supposedly functional relationship, but now it's causing a lack of function for Daniels. He had his promise, didn't he, his position for Major.
That's right.
That's fallen flat because of the mayor's intervention, and we see Daniel's frustration or confusion as to why what his wife is doing should relate to what he's doing.
Yeah.
And then I think he begins to understand why people maneuver in this way, and he really kind of sees for himself this political image. It has to be seen as one very close-knit clique almost. Everyone has to be big mates together, and
no.
yeah, it's unusual.
Yeah, so it's not fun at all for him. And it's nice to see him take a good jab at Burrell, though, telling him that we promote the wrong man all the time.
Yeah, it's a good line.
And we already see that the Season 3 politics institution has a far-reaching consequence in the police department, not least in Comstat, but as you mentioned, in this meeting here.
Goes right to the personal lives
Yeah.
of the people involved.
Definitely. And Burrell is pretty much proving his own point that by having this restriction in place, they're already promoting the wrong people. And I think Prez makes a nice comment a bit later on, saying, if Drac was one of our own, he'd be the deputy commissioner by now, or something like that. So I thought that was a nice kind of mirror image for it. Yeah. So that's it for 7. Anything else to add there, Alex? Or
No, ready to move on.
Okay, sure. So 8. So McNulty goes to a Baltimore Orioles game with his old partner Bunk. He meets his estranged wife Elena to take his children for the second half. Elena has a new boyfriend who's able to afford far better seats than the detectives, but shows little interest in the game. Meanwhile, Detective Ed Norris works a shooting scene and gets a call about another murder. He tells the homicide unit to call Bunk in to work the case. Bunk is forced to leave the game as they receive 5 homicides in one night.
As another bit of a comedy scene in a way for McNulty and Bunk. And just McNulty again being, I don't know, a little bit foolish. All he cares about is what's going on with Elena. So yeah, it's just trying to introduce a bit more of that domestic life of McNulty and how it's affecting his relationships with others, in this case, Bunk.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, McNulty is just very hostile towards Elena and towards... is he given a name? Does he mention his name of the new boyfriend?
Yes, I think it's Dennis something. Dennis something or other. I don't think we ever see him again, but he is some sort of top-down big dog lawyer who has company seats down the front.
Yeah.
And
so yeah, McNulty just being a bit unnecessarily hostile here.
Yeah.
Another bit of arseholery, basically.
Just sort of blanking him completely, yeah. Much to Elena's disgust. And I think the fact that he's on the phone the whole time and doesn't take any interest in the game is just aggravating him even more. It's like, why have these seats if you're not going to bloody enjoy the game? So it's just kind of...
Well, but the irony is he's not enjoying the game either
yeah.
because he's too busy focusing on that.
Exactly, which is great. So, a lot of grumpy behaviour here. I quite enjoyed seeing the Orioles game in general. It was a nice slice of Baltimore culture that we get to see a bit of.
If that was in Tremé, they would have had like a 10-minute long musical scene, and they would have spent about 25 minutes just of random shots of people in the crowd dancing and stuff.
Bring on the tambourines. It's just kind of more of a just completely ambient take on the scene. Yeah,
in a way, yeah.
That is true. They keep it very functional here in The Wire. It's just get the information we need to know and off we go. So it's another man got promoted, and Elena's with a new downtown guy, and it's nice to see Elena's mothering instructions as well. Don't take Sean's jacket off. He's got a cold. It's a school night. Don't stay past the last inning. It's just things that McNulty doesn't ever think about, and it's just kind of that contrast being drawn again, and. She does rub it in his face massively though by telling him that Dennis has company seats. She totally didn't need to say that, but she's reeling in the pleasure there.
Yeah. And we see the real Baltimore commissioner.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Ed Norris.
Oh yeah, he's back. Yeah, I don't think he was in much of season 2, and he's there looking at one of the bodies while he's telling Bunk to get his ass into work.
Fuck his off day.
Yeah. They caught 5 tonight. The city's jumping bad. So it's...
So yeah, that's pretty incredible. 5 murders in one night. So yeah, Bunk obviously has to go.
So it makes sense.
And that's pretty much that, really.
Yeah. And I quite like the 5 murders being interspersed amongst the Orioles game. They keep switching between those 2 scenes. And it's kind of the disparity. The stadium and the ghettos are a couple of miles apart, but different worlds of, loud, noisy entertainment versus stone cold death sort of thing. So it's kind of nice that they're showing that. It's quite odd. It might be a nice time for us to talk about the Baltimore riots, because I believe that this stadium, the Camden Yards, was during a baseball game when the riots were actually being carried out, and the riots came close to the stadium this week, and they had to lock the crowds in to avoid any safety concerns. So it's perhaps kind of coincidental that we come across these scenes here at this point in time. So, but
yeah, I mean, so if we want to go into just a little bit more detail about the riots at the moment, so those of you that don't know, I dare say you probably do, but if you don't, it seems that at the moment, at the time of this being recorded, there's some actual riots going on in Baltimore right now. Now, I don't know the full picture. I haven't actually read a whole lot of the stuff about it, but as I understand, it's largely just to do with the black community's frustration over the treatment of them by the police, and it's just police brutality. And you have black people and white people being committed for the same crimes, but black people getting longer and harsher sentences and things like that. So it's to some extent it's understandable. Is it? It's that Martin Luther King quote where something, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like the riot is the language of the unheard, or something like that. So a lot of frustration and tension has boiled over, and there's some pretty serious rioting going on. They've actually sent in the National Guard, haven't they?
Yeah, it's a serious situation. There's loads and loads of buildings have been burnt down.
It's another spate of riots for America as well. I mean, we had Ferguson not so long ago. Well, I say we didn't have Ferguson. We were nice and safe, and but you know what I mean. Like they happened, and so another major incidence of rioting for the United States.
Yeah, definitely. It's the worst that Baltimore's seen since 1968.
For the same reasons as well.
Yeah. Because I mean,
I really hope they're getting the message. That's the only thing I can, because it's not going to get any better if they keep it up. I mean,
certainly, yeah. So it's kind of crazy to hear about all this, and I believe it. Despite it being more of a general unrest at the treatment of black people in the city, it was sparked by a specific incident, wasn't it? I believe it was to do with the was it the death of a guy held in custody. It's not entirely sure what went on there, but there was certainly something that happened last week that sparked it off. Similar to the riots.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I'm sort of wary of sort of proclaiming.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the media, isn't it? It's the media's always going to skew things if they get the chance. So,
I mean, not only that, but because we're not like residents of Baltimore or anything, so we don't really. Yeah. It's difficult to really say exactly what's going on. Kind of a little bit hesitant to say exactly what's happening or to provide some news star report, because I hate to be giving out inaccurate information purely for the sake of conjecture. Whatever.
Yeah, certainly.
But suffice to say that if you are in Baltimore, then if you'd like to let us know a bit more of the details of what's going on, I would like to hear it from a sort of local point of view. That would be interesting, and also stay safe as well.
Yeah, I believe one of the buildings burnt down was the shop that Omar went into to die in season 5.
Oh, really?
So,
well, he didn't go in there to die, but
yeah, he certainly didn't go in there with the intent. But Kennard had other ideas. Sorry, season 5 skipping. But yeah, that was one of the burnt buildings in the riots this week. So. Yeah, so there's our little riot chat, and we'll see. I guess next week we'll find out if things have calmed down. We were talking about the Orioles game, kind of contrasting against the 5 murders going on the other side of the city. I don't know if you've got anything else to say about that strand there, Alex, or should we?
No, nothing else.
Okay, right. We get to our last major case unit section here. So the following day, Daniels marshals his men for the hand-to-hand on Man. Sidner is the undercover officer. Pullman notices that Daniels has been living out of his office. Once out in the field, Greggs and McNulty make a clean arrest, and Sidner maintains his cover. Drac immediately starts talking about a possible promotion on the wiretap. Unfortunately, the promotion goes to Cheese instead of Drac.
Just a bit of bad luck on the part of the detail here. They took a bit of a stab, and they happened to be wrong. And it obviously leads to Daniel saying something to Burrell, promoting the wrong guy. We do it all the time.
Yeah, certainly. So it says it all.
But I don't really have a whole lot to say about
No, not really. I mean, I like Sidner's confidence in Lavelle's stupidity / their rapport they've built up together, that the manoeuvre will work. He's clearly very good at his undercover thing. That's kind of his niche. And
maybe he's been listening to Bubbles.
Yeah,
from back
taking
in season 1, and gives them all of that advice about how to actually look the part.
Definitely, yeah. So it's good that they've got a guy that can do that for them. A bit of he kind of takes over the Herc and Carver role, I guess, as their more on the field guy.
It's nice that various characters have their moments to pretend to be someone.
Yeah.
Kima pretends to be the girl in the car.
Yeah.
for the thing with Orlando, and then McNulty gets to be James Cromwell, whatever his name is.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
And then we have Sidner, who has a couple of roles,
Yeah,
mainly as sort of slightly more generic characters,
kind of.
hustlers, dope fiends, that sort
That's
of thing.
the one. Yeah, and then as soon.
Are there any others?
Well, I mean, you could say Daniel's pretending to be a husband.
Freeman pretending to be a drunk guy
Yeah,
and then smashing someone in the face with a bottle, which is really quite brutal.
yeah, that doesn't feel like acting.
Freeman.
That feels like a bit of a violation of Freeman's character. But we'll let that one go. It might have been kind of plastic glass, if that's possible. Yeah, so it's good. I mean, they do, I think, immediately abut this scene with Daniels pretending to be a husband in the Marla scene. I don't know.
Oh yeah, nice.
So I thought that was quite a nice thing to see The Wire doing with its parallels again.
Yeah, very nice.
All right.
Is that the end of the major
Yeah, that's
case
the
unit,
end.
did
So
you
we just
say?
have 3 more much shorter sections. So firstly, the Western District, which has a couple of subsections. So Ellis Carver marshals his new squad and plans a sting on a corner drug dealing operation. Herc prepares himself by playing the theme from Shaft. Carver orders his men to let the runner go, expecting him to be a decoy. When the runner picks up a bag, Carver changes his mind and starts a pursuit. The real stash remains with the dealers. They lose the young boy in alleyways and call him back up. Carver stands atop his car and delivers a speech insisting that they will catch the runner eventually.
So this is once more another Herc and Carver comic relief scene in a way, with their foolishness, and we have the Isaac Hayes music, the theme from Shaft, obeying. Whereas in season 2 we had a lot of violations of the general stylistic rules of The Wire, especially involving music. And there's loads of montages, for example, in season 2. Here we have our case of music adhering wonderfully to the rules, where we can only hear the theme sort of when Herc is actually close in the car, and when he's further away we kind of hear it coming closer, and he turns up and like quotes certain lines from the tune, and you know it's pretty ridiculous having this music playing as they're driving around just to enhance the really kind of comic view of what's going on.
Yeah, it's a great moment, and I love I think it's one of my favourite Carver lines actually, when Herc introduces the whole heat kind of mind frame for his police work, and Carver's only response is seek therapy. Just kind of walks off. It's just fantastic. So one of my favourite exchanges, that they're not getting any less funny, and as you say, I do like the way it has to play by its own rules. So despite the fact that they kind of want to pump the music for this action sequence, you have to wait until Herc drives a bit close to you to kind of hear it. But it does seem like it goes for a nice bass drop when Carver gets in with him. It's like they kind of ratcheting up the tension even more. So
Yeah, acts surprisingly well as incidental music for the scene.
yeah,
Whilst maintaining the diegesis, and when The Wire does that, it proves just how well that can be done.
definitely.
Even if it does, obviously in this case, it's just purely for comedic effect.
Yeah, definitely.
I also like the way it's shot as well. I like the way this action scene is shot. There's a lot of telescopic lenses moving quickly. Something about it makes it seem like the sort of lower shutter speed or something like that. It feels a bit more jittery, more on edge than a lot of the other filming. A bit more shaky cam, perhaps. Yeah, I just like the way it's shot. It feels very documentary-esque.
Yeah, I feel you there. Definitely. Good scene overall.
I think I've said before, though, how I don't like the bit at the end.
Yeah, I was going to mention you actually, because I know you frequently cite this scene as like one of the cringiest in the show, don't you? As kind of one of the most misjudged scenes, I think, for you.
It just doesn't really do anything to me. I don't really understand it. It's just Carver jumping on top of this car and delivering this long speech about, you know, it doesn't come across as particularly genuine. Something about it feels off for me. It's just my opinion on that one. But it just feels a little bit overwrought, maybe.
Yeah,
It doesn't really prove anything. It doesn't tell us much about Carver's personality, and it's just some random kid that they're after.
I don't know.
I don't feel like they've been worked up in this way to really matter that much. Something about it feels out of place.
I think you got to remember that these guys have just been, zooming down the streets with the Shaft soundtrack on full blast. they've got adrenaline pumping through them. They're gonna have to unleash these kind of manly roof shouts. So, but yeah, it's kind of over the top, but it's them just committing themselves to the way they think policing should work. It's that rip and run style, and we can rule by fear almost. So it's good.
I mean, maybe it has a certain relation to real life, and maybe there have been police that go around doing that sort of thing. I don't know, but I don't know. It felt like a bit, especially after the fact that it's stitched with that scene, obviously having the music from Shaft playing and then working themselves up and trying to be these heroes or buddy cop. They're trying to live the buddy cop film or something, and then having that following it just feels a little bit too much for me personally.
Okay.
But still, a very enjoyable scene. And like I say, I love the way it's shot, and I love the way the music's used. So it's not that big of a deal, really.
I guess the scene overall, it's there to establish a status quo for these characters from which they can then build from in the season. They can kind of develop to somewhere new. So at the moment, we're enjoying their rip and run thrills, but later on, we're going to see them working towards a bigger project in the form of Amsterdam under Colvin's instruction. But I think it was pretty entertaining to see them getting generally outsmarted by young children in the process.
They're definitely humiliated.
Yeah. So, and of course, some more big characters introduced. Colicchio, Dozeman being the two main ones who stay through with us till season 5. But we also have Lambert and Garrick, I believe, are the other two Western District kind of street officers here. So yeah, it's good to see more characters coming onto the scene. Right. Okay, so our final Western District section. So Major Colvin greets 2 new officers to the district, Aaron Castor and Brian Baker. He gives them a tried and tested speech about knowing their location is the key to survival and provide them with compasses. Carver and Herc have finally caught their runner and bring him in. Colvin asks them if they have any drug charges. They were forced to charge the kid with loitering and criticises their use of resources. Lieutenant Mello hosts a meeting with the Western District officers as they start their shift. He asks them to stop throwing beer cans onto the roof of their precinct building, as it has been noticed by media helicopters. He closes the meeting with his catchphrase, "Don't get captured." So Colvin checks in with Mello and tells him that he's going out into the district. On his way, he checks in with Carver's squad and is disappointed to see that they have brought in more street dealers on loitering charges with no leads into their distributors. Out in the district, Colvin is even more disappointed when one of Marlowe's young drug dealers, Justin, approaches him despite his being in uniform.
We start with what, in a way, I think should have been the first scene for Colvin. It would have been nice if this was the introduction of Colvin, I do feel. Obviously, having seen the rewatch, I mean, it comes in season 2 when he arrives on the scene of that. It's where the kid dies from a stray. And we see Colvin arrive, and he has a little moment there. And again, we are prepped somewhat for season 3 to see his disillusionment at the way that the policing is run and its response to the drugs. And that is a nice introduction in a way, but this is such a strong scene for Bunny in the way he has that speech, and how I think it's Carver says, he's been given that speech since goodness knows when, sort of thing. So,
well, I mean,
in a way, I do sort of feel like this could have been a good introduction scene for Colvin as well.
Yeah, no, it certainly says all it needs to say about Colvin. Although I will say that, I mean, Herc's been there for a few months, so it's probably just a bit of rhetoric from Herc to give us his sense of importance inflated. But
yeah, it's not really. I guess maybe they know that information offhand from other people. So
yeah, but yeah, it was certainly good. That I do love the fact that one of the guys points up as well. It never kind of fails to be funny.
And my dick is pointing south-southwest.
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of funny moments in here. Herc and Carver particularly on very strong form. So, and it's nice that Colvin is introduced through Herc and Carver. There's kind of we're not just flying into a new institution. There's characters that we're grounded with that we can follow there, which is nice.
Returning several times to this position outside Colvin's office where they're sort of writing people up for whatever asinine crime they've picked.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and the tuts of Colvin at every stage. Yeah, and I think they say that they took this guy in for loitering in a designated drug-free zone, which is kind of the opposite of Amsterdam already at the moment. So we see we've got a long way to go before Amsterdam is formed.
Yeah.
And we do see, of course, Dennis Mello towards the end making the real Jay Lansman making a kind of seminar speech, which we'll see a few of throughout the show. Which is, I think, the sort of same podium as Stringer uses to address his young'uns. But we'll get to that other parallel a bit later. So just, I guess the main thing to say really is a lot of funny stuff in the Western District this episode, and a nice establishment of kind of the status quo for the district at the moment.
Yeah, and seeing the state of the state that things are in when someone is going to approach. So you mentioned before where Justin approaches Bunny in the car to see if he wants to buy spider bags. And he has to actually put his hat on in order to be noticed. Turning the radio all the way up doesn't seem to be a giveaway. So it tells you just how brazen all of the drug dealing has become.
Yeah, and it really puts into mind that strong desire for reform into his head. And
you can tell that, especially after that, Bunny feels more certain than ever.
Yeah, and the fact that not even the presence of the police chief rolling up next to you will ward off drug dealing. It's a seriously disappointing and depressing thought for him, and I guess the fact that the towers are gone, and now that these drug dealers have spilled out onto the streets, it's made things worse from a kind of community visual perspective. The crime's a lot more visible, and it's in the way of more communities more now. It's not so tucked away in the towers, and it's meant that it's much more of a free for all. So. It's kind of cool to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, should we move on to our Bubbles strand?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So, Bubbles and Johnny push a new haul of junk metal down the street. They lose control of the trolley and it crashes into the car of Marlowe's driver. He threatens them with a weapon, but when Marlowe urges him to hurry up, he lets them go, taking their trousers as punishment. After buying new pants, they are short of cash for drugs and cannot get enough for both of them. Bubbles bemoans their situation as they bed down for the night, while Johnny holds out hope for the next day.
Another laugh out loud moment here for the show with their trousers being taken away. It's just this very comical cut to them wandering down the street with no trousers on. Very simple bit of humour. And we sort of mentioned the bit with the car already, didn't we, because of the introduction of Marlowe.
Yeah, big moment here.
There's just a very nonchalant introduction of Bubbles and Johnny with their car, and then all of a sudden they lose control of it, and it's almost like a sort of cartoon moment, really. But it becomes a lot more serious when the driver pulls a gun out, and Johnny comes this close to getting it, and a very, very cold Marlowe doesn't seem to make the slightest bit of difference to him.
Yeah. He may well be about to witness someone's cranium kind of splatter onto a car bonnet, but I guess
if you shoot someone in the head at that range, it makes an awful mess. Like to put it in, for lack of a better way of putting it, like it's he just doesn't seem to be that bothered at all. Just like go on, then you do it if you want.
As long as the car still moves, I'm happy for you to do it.
Yeah, they're far more worried about this car.
Yeah.
That they could probably afford to buy another one of easily anyway. Whilst Bubbles and Johnny are scrimping by trying to sell this metal just to get their next hit, and then they end up having to pay the majority of it just to, they end up barely getting anything anyway.
Yeah.
And we see Bubbles' despair. We see that he's fallen back into the drugs, as we've seen. We saw last season that he's right back on it.
Yep.
But much more quickly than before, we see him already becoming disillusioned again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it is good to see that they lost their trousers rather than got splattered on the bonnet, and the guy made the right choice.
Far more positive.
Yeah,
outcome.
but as you say, that there is that scene kind of towards the end of this strand where it closes in on Bubbles' face and he's kind of talking themselves through their problems, and the fact that he's constantly about to lose his life in multiple situations and losing his trousers, which is perhaps a bit more of a trivial concern, but still it's a bit of a concern. You don't want to walk around without your bloody trousers on. And I do like the fact that Bubbles tries to barter. He wants to get 2 shots for 16, and when the guy refuses, he still has 20 to pay him out. So it clearly shows that he's not desperate, but he does have a bit of a long-term game plan. He's still being enterprising, and he's trying to get the best deal he can when it's there. So yeah, it's good to see. And just as when Bubbles' resume of the day finishes, there's loads of gunfire downstairs, which is probably one of the 5 homicides. So it kind of really paints this picture, the early season 3, where they want to convey a big sense of violence, a big spike in violence. And they're certainly encompassing this with Bubbles' story, this episode.
Well, it comes as part of season 3's, well, if you want to tie it into the whole politics thing, it's almost like its manifesto for the season here is to look at the drug war in much broader terms, and in a kind of city-wide response sort of way. Whereas we might have been dealing with supply or the effect on people's lives or whatever. In season 3, there is this sense of the drug war in a really, really broad sense.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess in that way it feels a lot less focused than the other seasons. It doesn't kind of have its thing, if you know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of has its Amsterdam, doesn't it? That becomes such an important part of it. But I think at the start, it doesn't feel like there's a real narrative grounding. It does feel quite patchy. It kind of hops around lots of places without a real anchor. And I think you can see that as well by just looking at the previous starting episodes. Like season 1 finished with, William Gant getting got, and D'Angelo has to deal with that. Season 2 started with the girls being discovered by Beatty, and the docs have to deal with that. And season 3 doesn't really have that dramatic grounding. It doesn't have that thing to come back for. So it takes a little bit longer to kind of build into something.
That's true. Yeah, it kind of ends on Colvin's disbelief and him driving away.
Yeah.
And like I say, we're left with a very general sense of what's wrong with the city of Baltimore.
Yeah, so I think in that sense it is the slowest start this season. But I think it's another one that works really well in hindsight rather than first time viewing. Really, I think at this point for an uninitiated viewer, it's still quite patchy and difficult to grasp onto. I think that's a problem that's completely eradicated by the time season 4 comes around. But it's kind of the final teething problems, I guess. Yeah.
So any more to say about the Bubbles bit? Anything to say about Johnny here? Doesn't really do anything other than he nearly gets killed.
Yeah,
That's a pretty major thing. But
the less we talk about Johnny, the better in my eyes. I mean, there's nothing of note to talk about with him here. I mean, he
But we don't wish death upon him.
No, we don't. I mean, I guess the one thing of note is that he's the optimistic one, whereas Bubbles is, in this case, very much the pessimist. He's holding out hope for the next day that they'll be able to score some stuff and forget about their problems. So, is that the best way to deal with it? In some ways, it keeps you happier, but then again, it also intensifies the problems you have. So, I think, just not my favourite. Of course, it's his last season. Hooray!
Right, so that means the last section or the last strand must be all of the stuff to do with the Barnes.
That's right. Yeah, we've got 3 fairly short little subsections here. So the first one is Stringer chairing an organisation meeting at the funeral home to discuss their new direction now that their main territory is lost. Shamrock oversees the meeting and ensures that it conforms to Robert's rules of order. Bodie suggests that they need to take a new territory by force, and Pooh agrees. Stringer criticises Bodie over these actions for the previous year in taking over territory and bringing police attention. Slim Charles is a new chief enforcer, and he's dubious of their ability to operate without territory. Stringer believes that product is now the key to his operation. He suggests that they supply other dealers with their products rather than battle over territory. When Slim Charles and Pooh remain openly dubious, Stringer becomes angry and urges them to think like grown men.
So this is the new Stringer plan, and it's a somewhat dignified affair, as dignified as it can be, I suppose. And I think we mentioned before about that idea of, when the cat's away, Stringer is definitely putting things into the way that he wants it to be, and it's almost a little bit, almost like pretentious or something in a way, where he wants it to be very officious and very businesslike. But they're still sort of, it's actually one of the most humorous parts of the show, I think, when it's all following this, Robert's Rules of
That's
Order.
it, yeah.
And so it leads to all these street slang enunciated phrases like, chair ain't recognise your ass. It's pretty ludicrous, really. And Stringer is taking it so seriously.
It doesn't feel contrived either, which is great, because you get the sense that Stringer, fair enough, he has to admit that he's come from the street, but if he could, he'd be running a proper corporate business, and he wants to kind of bridge the gap as much as he can, I guess. And by conforming to the business rules and business ideals and things, he can kind of create that as much as he can. So I like the fact that he's trying to bring in those kind of business pretensions to the gang, to the organisation.
And that presumably forms quite a large part of his respect for Prop Joe. Look the part, be the part, motherfucker.
Yeah.
That's very much Stringer's thing as well. Like, he wants to make it. He wants to, make it that way, even if it's somewhat by force, even if he's sort of forcing a certain characterization upon himself or on his subordinates or whatever. Because he wants it to be business-like, he's just going to lever it into that style.
Yeah.
Whether or not it feels particularly natural or whether everyone will catch on straight away. Poot clearly doesn't.
Nope.
I like the way they even make him stand up. They're like, there's that hand just at the corner of the screen. He's like,
yeah, I love that.
It's like the hand, like gesturing him upwards. I like that it's in shot, and he sort of has to rise to his feet. And do the chair know that we're going to look like some punk ass bitches? And that really sets sets him off. It's interesting that it's Poot returning to that idea of reputation. We're going to look like bitches. If we do this, then people aren't going to respect us anymore. And it's that flies Stringer into a rage. Is this sort of reminder of the Avon style of doing things. It has to be all about your reputation and protecting yourselves and not looking weak. And it's that in particular that really pushes him over the edge. It's very telling.
Definitely. Good point. Just overall a fantastic Stringer scene, and so early in the season, it's one of the first scenes like in this episode, and just a fantastic start for us. So I think a fantastic scene, and as you say,
the
punk ass bitches is a real highlight. I'm just trying to imagine that being spoken in a real kind of corporate office environment. Just the chair knowing to look like some punk ass bitches.
Punk ass. Punk arse bitch. That's the very kind of British element of this podcast. Arse. We say arse.
There's an R in that word. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ass.
Ass bitches. Okay, so that's our Stringer Robert Rules scene. We now have the prison scene. So Weebay talks to a prisoner named Dennis Cutty Wise, who's about to be paroled after a 14-year sentence. Cutty was once a legendary soldier in the drug trade. As Avon Barksdale walks across the exercise yard to talk to them, Play stops to allow him to pass. Avon asks Cutty for help securing new territory and gives him a number to call when he is released for a coming home gift. Avon worries that prison might have broken Cutty, but Weebay believes he is strong.
It shows how much power and influence Avon must have in order to silence that game. As he walks across it, we don't really see exactly what it is that he's done to gain that level of reputation, but we can tell that he enjoys it. We see that almost a level of fear and that coercion and the respect that people have for him, he really lives it. Emphasizes the importance of that to him. But again, like I say, we don't really see exactly what it is that he's done in order for people to willingly go silent when he crosses the field of play.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's not just the game stops. Like everyone
just goes silent.
It's like they take a minute of silence out for him. Like it is a real reverence they have for the guy.
Yeah, it's like ultra respected, like he's some kind of monk. Or something.
Very weird. So it's kind of cool to see
It's
that.
like apostle of cocaine.
Yeah. So I guess the main point though is that Cutty has done 14 years. He went in, I think, at the turn of the 90s, and now he's out mid-noughties, and he's not necessarily enthusiastic about going back. We sense Avon sees this. The joint might have broken him.
Yeah, there's a real resigned element to what Cutty's doing. He feels a bit begrudging.
Yeah.
He's just doing it because he doesn't. Certainly, first off, he thinks that he doesn't really have anything else to go back to. That's what he knows. So he gets the offer. He's given a kind of position of security straight off the bat. It's not like we don't see him get offered anything else. Certainly not from any local authorities that we know of. So yeah, he's put straight back onto the street, and that's where he ends up. And then, as we'll look into more with our later sections, no doubt, how the game has changed.
Yeah.
14 years is a long time.
Definitely.
And it makes him a real outsider. He's clearly much older than all of the other people involved in the game at the moment, and he was playing a very different game back then.
Definitely. I do kind of like Weebay's story, though. What Weebay's story signifies Cutty as the ultimate soldier. The guy who shot their most feared enemy, and then I assume it was to avoid the investigation that the gang, that the Barksdales would get, or whoever he was involved with would get. He turned himself in to kind of, a bit of a Weebay tactic, just get the police off their case. To take the hit for the squad. So it's, things have certainly changed since those days of honour.
Yeah, I mean, he must be one hell of a, talking about reputations, it must be one hell of a reputation on Cutty to be getting that level of respect from Weebay, of all people.
Yeah.
Who, in more current terms, we consider to be the sort of ultimate soldier.
Yeah, definitely.
Cutty is clearly the Weebay of the past.
Yep. And that leads us nicely into our final little section. So we go from section 14 for 14 years, and then section 15. So once on the outside, Cutty phones the number Avon gave him. He arranges a meet, and Shamrock arrives and gives him directions to a package of narcotics and tells him to wait for some real work. Cutty watches one of Marlowe Stanfield's crews plying their trade. He approaches the main dealer, Fruit, and strikes a deal to work the package he's been given for a share of the profit. When Cutty returns later that night, Fruit tells him his stash was stolen. Cutty asks him for a crime report number, and Fruit pulls a gun to drive him away.
Yeah, it seems almost bizarre that operating this honourable crime system, and it got stolen, you give someone some kind of crime report number to prove that hadn't really. I mean, there is nothing like that in the game right now. It's at a very sorry state of affairs. It is complete anarchy, and people will just pull guns on you. Can't trust anyone. There's no honour among thieves, as it were. And it's just become a very, very dangerous place, and we've seen it already with what's going on with Marlowe's coldness towards Johnny nearly getting shot, and again the brazenness of Justin approaching Colvin later on, and again here. Cutty thinks he's entering a perfectly reasonable deal. He's just trying to make his money, and the next thing he knows, he's nearly getting shot over it. So,
yeah,
it's he's been reintroduced, I should say, to an extremely different world, and it shows just how out of touch he is. And that's the effect that being inside the prison system for a decade and a half. That's what it has. The effect that it has on you. And if you're given no other options, you end up sort of welcome nowhere in a way, and as a result, as we see over the course of this season and the rest of the seasons, that Cutty carves his own world for himself instead.
Yeah, and it's lovely to see the realisation of these changes through Cutty's eyes, and none of it's really clearly spelt out to us, demonstrated perhaps best in the scene where he wanders down his old street, and we see that one side has been demolished, and there's just kind of crickets and long grass piling up. And on the other side, all this, the houses are all boarded up, and his little post box with a fading Wise name on it is kind of sat there, and it's ambiguous what Cutty actually remembers from this place in the 80s, but we can assume that these houses were at least lived in and cared for, and there was a bit of a sense of community, and the long cricket field grass was actually a nice parkland perhaps, but it's just really nice to see his face. His face does all the work for us. It tells us exactly how shocked he is to see this place in this sad state of disrepair, really. And then oddly, the Barksdells don't really help him out. They talk all this talk about how he's such a great soldier, but they leave him this package on his own. I don't know if it's some sort of initiation or what, but it's certainly a tricky task. Maybe that's just what's expected of you now in the game, but you'd have thought they'd have put him somewhere a little bit higher up in the fold.
Yeah, just a sort of welcoming gift or something.
Yeah.
That's the way they seem to sell it. And like you say, maybe that's what's to be expected because of the amount of weight being sent out. And they even say, wait for some real work. And he gets given this large amount of narcotics, and he seems quite surprised by the amount. But they suggest that that's not even close to what would be considered real work, as it were. So it just shows that bigger business, and that bigger business has caused a ruthless spirit, as well as in conjunction with all the other things going on at the time.
Absolutely.
Particularly, as you say before, with the towers coming down, and all of that business being pushed more out onto the street, and the effect that it has on the communities, and it forces people to be far more territorial.
Yeah.
Given that there's a bit of a shortage.
Definitely. So that's good.
And the smarts of Stringer to change the game in that way, that it's not about territory anymore, it's about product.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, speaking of that product, Cutty is given a big package to peddle. And there's that one scene where he's seen in, I think, his basement maybe, where he's seen staring at the gel caps. And I don't know if we're meant to assume that he may be considering taking one or not, or wondering how he's going to shift them. It's not quite clear what he's thinking in that scene, but he eventually sort of tries to scout out a crew that he thinks may be honourable or particularly efficient at peddling the drugs, and he spies Fruit's gang, which is one of the Marlowe subsidiaries, I guess would be the best way to put it. And Fruit's not a particularly nice fellow, as we'll get to know. He's got a pretty ruthless introduction to the show here with Cutty. And yeah, he just completely says no to the old rules, and I'm in it for myself, and you can go and fuck yourself, really. So, yeah, it's good to see.
Yeah, I saw that bit with Cutty in the gel caps and on the bed or whatever it was. I kind of saw that as him being amazed at how much it was, or how exactly he was going to shift that much.
Yeah, it was clearly a different ball game back then. Whatever he was thinking, I guess. Yeah. So, and it is unfortunate that Cutty chose to seek to wholesale to Fruit, one of the new breed. It's hard to say, but you sense a loyal Barksdale would have played the game legit and, not fucked him over like this. So, he did kind of pick an unlucky one. And Fruit, it's cool to see how Fruit plays as our Marlowe surrogate for the first few episodes, because Marlowe remains a pretty elusive presence throughout a lot of Season 3. And Fruit is kind of the guy who does the talking for him, really. So he's a character that's pretty nasty piece of work overall, like Marlowe. So it's nice to see another sort of pretty big character introduced.
Yep.
He's kind of overseeing these guys getting the backstreet blowjobs right at the end as well.
This is almost like, we talked before about characters being at their lowest point, but in a general sense, maybe this is the city at its lowest point.
Yeah, that's a very good point, yeah. Doesn't really get much more depraved than that, does it? And I quite like how here, this is towards the end of the episode as well, that they cut between Cutty speaking to Fruit here and Colvin driving through the Western and kind of lamenting what's going on in the streets. So there's that. We end the episode with that real strong drive for reform from both Cutty and Colvin here. I think that's kind of what they're going for at the end there. It's
that's nice
to see that.
So that concludes the recap,
Yes,
I think.
Absolutely. Anything else that we've missed, or should we go into our final sections?
No, I think we should move on.
You ever seen this motherfucker when he walking out to the clinic, Bert? Poop be like this. He looks like a backwards ass cowboy and shit. Instead of like this, my man walking like this. Dick looking like a fried chicken wing.
Now, mistakes have been made, but we will learn from those mistakes. Reform is not just a watchword with my administration. No, it's a philosophy.
Shit, man, no matter how many times you get burnt, man, you just keep on doing the same. Nigga, do not learn.
Okay, so what was your favourite scene or the most notable ones for you?
The Robert Rules of... I've forgotten what it's called
Rules of
now.
Order.
The
Yeah.
book. Rules of Order, that's it. That scene with Stringer, that really stands out to me in terms of just Stringer scenes throughout the whole show. I think that's a fairly important turning point in a way, because he's starting to conduct business with everyone else in the crew in the way that he wants to as well, and rather than being these small little, reminders or pointers, it's he's actually got a real system for business now, and he wants it to be very very gentlemanly affair in a way. Civilized, later for the gangster bullshit. He really lays out reform here in the same way that Royce does, and in a strange way, there's more. There's a greater sense of him being genuine with these reforms and creating this change for good with someone who's a drug dealer than there is with someone like Royce, who's meant to be the mayor and meant to be creating genuine change for sort of legal means. So it's interesting, and there's that parallel there of all these different reforms and changes going on, and that there seems to be a lot more of it for real going on the street.
Yep, true that. With I'd say Marlowe's administration being the most successful reformers, not for the best, but certainly for the efficiency of Marlowe.
And I like this scene as a starting point for the arc of Stringer in this whole season.
It really is the Stringer season, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the start of him just taking big step after big step. He's really taken advantage of Avon being away and trying to step it up and make it legit, and it just all comes crashing down.
Yep.
This is just the first step on the ladder. So I really like the Stringer scene with the Robert Rules of Order.
Definitely.
That was probably there was a definite standout in this episode for me, I think, on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's top of my pile as well. But honourable mentions for the Comstats and I think the opening scene as well, the prison scene. I think Cutty roaming the streets and reminiscing. Not that we can see what he's reminiscing, but the idea that you can see it on his face is great. And I think the action scene with Herc and Carver as well. There's a lot of great stuff in there.
Nice introduction of Carquet.
Yeah, true that. Absolutely. So in terms of best characters, I think of all the new ones we get, they're kind of the three C's are our big grounding characters. So Cutty, Carcetti, and Colvin. And they're the instantly compelling ones. I think Colvin and Cutty are more immediately compelling at the moment. Carcetti takes a little time to warm up to, but ultimately becomes the best of the three, I think.
Yeah, Carcetti is easily one of my favourite characters in the whole show, but it is strange how slow a beginning he does have. Yeah. And rewatching it in this way makes me realise, like you said before, that he doesn't really do all that much in season 3. He doesn't he doesn't affect a lot of change, because the whole deal is that he doesn't have the power or the influence to do that. So yeah, it's a slow start for Carcetti for sure.
Definitely. What would you say was your or who would you say was your favourite character, or do you this time round at least?
Like you say, with all these introductions of new characters, it does make it tricky. I do think that it's a good introduction for Colvin, and it's a Colvin and Stringer season in a way. And I think it's a good introduction for Colvin here, and I do like his speech in the office. And we see that he's a man with very little to lose compared to a lot of the other officers. So, especially in relation to the Comstat meeting, where we get a first taste of that, he's going to bend some rules before the time is up.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a nice bit of preparation with Colvin there. So and he's just a great character in general. So, and the stuff that he does with season 4 later on, when he sort of goes into help with the school, it just gets better and better. So
certainly, yeah. I'm very much looking forward to Colvin's paper bag speech next episode, which is probably one of my favourite monologues in The Wire, definitely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a good choice. And the title of this episode, Time After Time. So I guess they're kind of alluding to the idea of repetition without learning. McNulty kind of said the same thing. Don't look at what you did before, you do the same thing over, right? And then there are some characters who push for reform and others who don't, but they all ultimately can't achieve it, apart from arguably Marlowe, who changes the game for the worse, but changes it nonetheless. So I just think, it's kind of just an embodiment of the whole idea of repetition without learning, I guess, isn't it? And Bodhi says, that his epigraph is of a similar nature.
Yeah, very close relationship between the title and the epigraph in this episode.
Yeah. I think it's the only instance of the quote being spoken before the epigraph appears as well. It comes like before the credits. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, the as for the epigraph, as you mentioned it before, and don't matter how many times you get burnt, you just keep doing the same, as Bodhi says to Poot. McNulty definitely ties into this as well.
Yeah.
Him returning to his old behaviours and this idea of things returning to some status quo. And for McNulty, the status quo is him being a bit of a jerk. It seems.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because obviously we know him a bit better than that by this stage.
Well, we know his intentions, but yeah, he certainly embodies that reform idea very well, or the lack of it. So nice introduction episodes. I guess a bit more broad than the other ones. Lots of new characters, like season 2. Disorientating for the new viewer. I think for us, the returning viewer, is a treat. And we know that the characters that are being introduced now are going to last. They're not kind of like season 2, where it's a one season thing. That these characters are going to take us through to season 5, so it really feels a lot more involved, I think, for the returning viewer.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense that this season is, in the same way that at the end of season 2 it's building framework for what's to come in season 3. Here in season 3 it's building the framework for what's to come in for the rest of the show.
Yeah.
And it defines much of what we come to expect from season 4 and season 5, because, as you say, all these characters are sticking around.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I don't know how he managed it, but we've gone from a 2-hour and 10-minute finale into a 2-hour and 15-minute first episode of season 3.
Yeah, it's definitely, especially having that first section where we had a bit more of a general chat before starting the recap. That's definitely added quite a bit of meat onto the episode.
We might have to be careful to tempt those down. We'll have to see.
I don't think we'll manage that every week, but we'll see.
Okay.
So yeah, it's nice to have a bit of a bumper episode. Send us in any more emails you got. Thanks to those that sent us in emails for this week. We always happy to read any criticisms you have. If maybe you thought the opening section we did was a bit long, or maybe you liked it. So we definitely want to hear about any changes about that you might have comments for. And it's exciting to be starting on season 3 at last. Glad to be moving on to a new season in a way, because we're making some really good progress. Feeling because we're well over halfway now, aren't we?
Not quite. No.
We've
done
quite
26 out of 60.
Oh no, yes, of course, because
yeah. So we got.
Because I know that there's like less episodes in season 5, but there's not that.
No, it's not that many. I mean, it'll be, give it another 4 weeks or so. We should be halfway through, assuming we keep the rhythm going.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see you next week. The release date should be the 8th of May. That'll be for the next episode. All Due Respect, I think it's called. So we'll see you then. Don't forget to send us any messages using the email caughtonthewire@gmail.com, or on our contact page on the website, which is caughtonthewire.wordpress.com. And we'll see you next week for All Due Respect. Bye-bye.